Chapter 630. In the deepest part of the mine, Lu Yi sat alone. Near the exit of the mine, many myriad demon ridge cultivators were spread out in an arc, constantly attacking and pushing forward layer by layer. Inside the huge mine, the spiritual power was extremely chaotic. Song Jue didn't attack again. With so many people gathered, there was no need to attack. He had been secretly observing Lu Ye's reaction. What puzzled him was that even in the face of such a desperate situation, Lu Ye's expression was still as calm as water, without the slightest panic. This made his heart skip a beat. Did Lu Ye really set up a teleportation array in advance? Otherwise, how could he be so calm? Or did he know that there was no way to escape and had no intention of resisting? But if the other party had set up a teleportation array in advance, he should have escaped by now. Why stay and take the risk? He secretly estimated the efficiency of the cultivators on his side. In less than a cup of tea's time, they would be able to push 500 feet forward. Once they reached this distance, even if the cultivators on his side only used some long-range attacks, it would be enough to consign Lu Yi to eternal damnation. Although he had set up a protective array, how long could it last? Just as many thoughts flashed through Song Jue's mind, Lu Yi, who had been sitting there motionless, suddenly stood up slowly. He held his long saber in front of him and looked at Song Jue across the air. When their eyes met, Song Jue was surprised to see a smile on the corner of Lu Ye's mouth, followed by Dan Dan's voice. Quite a few people came. Very good. Song Jue frowned and shouted, Lu Ye, what tricks are you playing now? Song Jue had been teased by him back in Huitian Valley, which made him angry. Now that Lu Yi suddenly said such words, Song Jue didn't know what he was trying to do. In the current situation, unless he set up a teleportation array in advance, there was no way he could survive. But looking at the other party's posture, it didn't seem like it. You have the advantage in numbers. I'm alone, what tricks can I play? Lu Yi replied casually. Someone in the crowd shouted, Lu Ye, if you know what's good for you, you'd better kill yourself quickly and save yourself some physical pain. Otherwise, when we're in front of you, it won't be easy for you to die. Who will live and who will die? Who can say for sure? The person who spoke laughed out loud. You don't think you have a way out today, do you? A large group of myriad demons rich cultivators roared with laughter. You don't need to worry about whether or not I'll be able to survive today. However, I'm afraid that all of you won't be able to survive today. These arrogant words caused even more myriad demons rich cultivators to laugh. For a moment, the atmosphere in the mine became joyous. Someone laughed so hard that he clutched his stomach and pointed at Lu Ye. I can't take it anymore. I've always heard about how amazing Lu Ye is, but it turns out that he's just a tough talker. Shameless boasting. Someone shouted angrily. Then I'd like to see how we can't survive. As if in response to this person's question, a violent fluctuation of spiritual energy suddenly came from the tunnel behind them, accompanied by a loud buzzing sound. This sudden turn of events caused all the cultivators of the Myriad Devil Ridge to be bewildered. They all turned their heads to look back and their expressions changed. They saw that the tunnel they had come from had suddenly collapsed. About 30 meters away from the entrance of the tunnel, a large amount of rubble had blocked the tunnel. The fierce spirit energy fluctuations continued to fluctuate, as if someone was madly attacking in the mine. As this person attacked, the range of the mine's collapse grew larger and larger, longer and longer, and the sound of the continuous roar gradually faded away. At this moment, Yi was casting spells in the tunnel. Powerful spells constantly bombarded the fragile rock walls of the tunnel, causing the rock walls to crack and the rubble to scatter, sealing the tunnel. With her current level of cultivation, it would be difficult for her to cause the tunnel to collapse if it was in perfect condition. However, this tunnel had already been bombarded by the explosion array activated by Lu Yi before. The surrounding rock walls were already weaker than normal, and there were even small areas of collapse in many places. What Yi was doing now was just pushing forward the original foundation. Naturally, the collapse of the tunnel was something she could easily achieve. Now that all the myriad demons rich cultivators had poured into the tunnel, there was no one in the tunnel. Moreover, everyone's attention was attracted by Lu Yi. When she appeared in the tunnel, no one noticed her at all. It wasn't until she attacked in all directions and the tunnel began to collapse that the myriad demons rich cultivators were alarmed. However, it was too late to stop her. When they saw the tunnel collapse, all the myriad demons' rich cultivators stopped. Ning's eye even flashed into the tunnel to investigate the situation. When he looked up, he saw that the tunnel they had come from was tightly sealed. Moreover, from the sound of the collapse, the area of the tunnel's collapse was obviously getting farther and farther, even spreading out for 1 or 2 miles. Such a large-scale collapse was not something that could be solved in a short period of time. Even if there were many myriad demons' rich cultivators, it would still take more than half a day to clear the tunnel. Fortunately, although the tunnel had collapsed, it didn't have much of an impact on the interior of the tunnel. Only the violent shaking caused a lot of rubble to fall from the top of the tunnel. Such a huge commotion naturally spread outside. Listening to Ghost Shadow's advice, senior brother Qin, who was waiting outside, immediately sensed the commotion. When he looked up, he saw that the mountain ahead was shaking violently. What happened? Senior sister Hu asked. Senior brother Qin frowned. From the sound of the commotion, it seems that the tunnel has collapsed. Why would it collapse all of a sudden? Senior sister Hu didn't understand. Perhaps it's caused by the aftermath of the battle inside. Senior brother Qin felt that something was wrong. Wuxia was alone, and the myriad demons Ridge had sent more than 2,000 people this time. The battle couldn't have been so intense. As long as the myriad demons Ridge found Wuxia's movements, they should be able to kill him quickly. Just as the two of them were talking, violent winds suddenly swept out from the depths of the tunnel, rushing out from the entrance and sweeping up dust. As expected, the tunnel has collapsed. Senior sister Hu's face was filled with fear. Even Cloud River tier cultivators wouldn't dare to ignore such a large-scale collapse. If they were buried inside, they would definitely die. It was unknown if anyone had been affected. Is this the danger that junior brother sensed? Senior sister Hu turned to look at Ghost Shadow. She had to admit that her junior brother's ability to sense danger was indeed impressive. If he hadn't dissuaded everyone just now, they might have really encountered this calamity. Ghost Shadow's expression was solemn, and he slowly shook his head. It shouldn't be that simple. A simple collapse couldn't have made him feel such a fierce sense of danger. Even now, when he recalled that feeling, he still felt lingering fear. However, he really couldn't understand what dangers were inside. No matter how he looked at it, Wuxia was definitely going to die this time. In the tunnel, as the sound of the collapse continued to spread, the myriad demons' rich cultivators also stopped what they were doing. However, everyone's expression was still considered calm. As long as the tunnel didn't collapse, it wasn't a big problem. The tunnel had collapsed because there was no way to leave in a short time. After killing Wuxia with so many people working together, they would definitely be able to clear a path. They wouldn't be trapped here to death. He actually has helpers. Songjue frowned. The accident just now wasn't an accident, but a man-made one. Wuxia had a hidden helper. After everyone had entered the mine, the helper made a move and collapsed the tunnel. However, no one saw what that helper looked like. If that was all, it wouldn't be a big deal. However, some unusual information revealed by this made Songjue feel uneasy. He recalled the scene when he followed behind Sinan and watched Sinan move forward as if he was wrapped in endless power, flattening the explosion formation set up by Wuxia. At that time, in his opinion, Wuxia felt that those explosion formations couldn't stop Sinan, so he simply activated them in advance with the intention of collapsing the tunnel in exchange for time at death's door. However, now it seemed that things weren't that simple. Those explosion formations that were activated in advance didn't collapse the tunnel, but instead made the rock walls around the tunnel loosen. After being attacked, it was easier for the tunnel to collapse. Wuxia had arranged for another helper to hide in the back, resulting in the current situation where no one could leave the tunnel. The current situation wasn't caused by a coincidence. It was originally part of some plan. What did he want to do? Songjue frowned. He really couldn't guess Wuxia's intentions. The only thing he could think of now was that Wuxia had set up a teleportation formation in advance and would find an opportunity to use it to leave here. If that was the case, then this operation would end in failure again. However, the other party hadn't left yet, so there was a high probability that he didn't have a teleportation formation. He also had a helper secretly coordinating with him, resulting in the current situation where everyone was trapped in the tunnel. Suddenly, someone in the crowd laughed. Wuxia, don't tell me you want this tunnel to collapse and bury everyone with you? If that's the case, then I'll have to disappoint you. It's only the tunnel that's collapsed. Although the hollowed-out tunnel had been affected by the tremor just now, it wasn't a big deal and was still solid. Bury with me? Wuxia's gaze was still calm as he looked at the densely packed cultivators of the Myriad Demon's Ridge. You don't have the qualifications. As I said, the only ones who won't live today are you. As he spoke, Wuxia raised a hand and curled his middle finger, holding a dark green bead at the tip of his finger. At this moment, a large amount of gray mist ignited on the talent tree in the Source Spirit aperture. Aiming at the direction of the Myriad Demon's Ridge cultivators, Wuxia poured his spiritual power into it and flicked his finger. Stop that thing, someone shouted. Although they didn't know what Wuxia had flicked, any action at this time was extremely suspicious. As the person's voice fell, a series of attacks attacked the dark green bead. Multicolored light enveloped the dark green bead like a flood. However, in the next moment, the rich dark green light instantly broke through the blockade of the multicolored light and exploded like a green cloud, sweeping in all directions. The myriad poison bead that would shake the 9 provinces in the future and make countless cultivators tremble in fear at the mention of its name, displayed its domineering power for the first time today. To be continued. Chapter 631. The dark green poisonous cloud exploded and instantly enveloped a large area, filling the space with green poisonous miasma. It was so dark that one couldn't even see their fingers in front of them. It was a color deeper than darkness and seemed to be able to devour all light. Everyone thought that Wuxia had flicked out a spiritual weapon to kill enemies. Who would have thought that it was such a plaything? Many Myriad Demon Ridge cultivators were caught off guard and were enveloped by the poisonous miasma. The next moment exclamations rang out. It's poison. Hold your breath. Take the antidote pill. Damn you, Wuxia. I'm going to tear you into pieces. Shay. The cultivators who were not affected by the poisonous miasma all panicked and retreated, trying to avoid the poisonous miasma. The affected cultivators hurriedly activated their spiritual power to protect themselves. At the same time, they held their breaths and hurriedly took out antidote pills from their storage bags and swallowed them. In this chaotic environment, another dark green myriad poison pearl rushed out of the miasma and flew above the many Myriad Demons Ridge cultivators. This time, before they could do anything to stop it, the myriad poison pearl exploded with a loud bang. A huge poisonous cloud spread out and enveloped a large number of Myriad Demon Ridge cultivators. Then, in another direction, the third infinite poison pearl exploded. When Wuxia had returned to the Spirit Stream battlefield to see Wuxia, he had taken a total of 3 infinite poison pearls from her. This time he had used all of them, leaving not a single one behind. As a result, almost all the Myriad Demon Ridge cultivators were enveloped by the poisonous cloud. As the Myriad Demon Ridge cultivators' spiritual power surged, the poisonous cloud spread throughout the entire mine. Soon violent coughing sounds came from the thick green fog, accompanied by labored breathing and screams. The Myriad Demon Ridge cultivators were shocked to find that even if they activated their spiritual power to protect themselves, they could not resist the corrosion of the poisonous miasma. Even if they held their breaths, the omnipresent poisonous miasma seemed to have entered their bodies through their pores. In just a few seconds, everyone showed different signs of being poisoned. Some felt numb all over, some felt unbearably itchy, and some felt dizzy. They staggered, and an abnormal green color appeared on their faces. But without exception, almost everyone felt that the spiritual energy in their bodies had become stagnant, and the flow of the spiritual energy river had slowed down. Moreover, this sign became more and more obvious as time passed. Putong sounds came from all over the place. Surprisingly, some of the cultivators with lower cultivation could no longer hold on and fell to the ground. The cultivators who could still hold on fled in all directions, but the poisonous fog had already filled most of the mine. Seeing that even Wuxia's position was no longer safe, where could they escape to? Originally, there was a way out by following the tunnel, but just now the tunnel had completely collapsed, and this place had become a completely sealed environment. There were curses, angry shouts, and screams of people being trampled. The scene was chaotic. Somewhere in the crowd, Song Jue felt his body weakening at a speed visible to the naked eye. The corners of his eyes twitched violently. Even he, a ninth order from a first-grade sect, couldn't resist the corrosion of the poisonous fog, so how could anyone else? Not long ago, he thought that Lu Yi had no other way out except to arrange a transmission array in advance, but in the blink of an eye, the situation had become so bad. The other party had never thought of escaping. He stayed here just to invite them into a trap. He wanted to kill 2,000 cultivators from Myriad Demon Ridge by himself. How audacious! Originally, this was impossible to achieve, but under the other party's step-by-step guidance and planning, this impossible thing now had some possibility of being realized. Yes, at this point, how could Song Jue not understand that this was all part of Lu Ye's plan? It was true that he had exposed his whereabouts, but it was probably not accidental. He had deliberately exposed himself to attract a large number of people from Myriad Demon Ridge here. As for his serious injuries, it should also be a kind of smokescreen. At the very least, he didn't see any signs of injury on Lu Ye's body. Lu Ye's aura was very stable. He had arranged many explosion arrays in the mine tunnel, but his biggest purpose was not to prevent the Myriad Demon Ridge cultivators from investigating further, but to loosen the stone walls in the mine tunnel in preparation for the collapse of the mine tunnel. When many cultivators from the Myriad Devil Ridge were attracted to this place, his hidden helper took action. The mine collapsed and everyone was trapped in this place, unable to escape for a while. And in such a sealed environment, the poison fog's power was undoubtedly at its greatest. It wasn't that he didn't have doubts before. For example, why was Lu Yi seriously injured? Who hurt him? Why was Lu Yi able to hide in the depths of Taimang Mountain for several days without being discovered by anyone, but instead exposed himself in the periphery? Even if his whereabouts were exposed, he shouldn't have chosen to hide in such an environment where there was no way out. But these doubts were all explained by himself with some possible answers. Moreover, who would have thought that a fifth-order Cloud River Realm cultivator would be so bold? Not only did he not try to hide his whereabouts when he was being hunted down by the entire Myriad Demon Ridge camp, he even took the initiative to set up a trap. He even lured so many Myriad Demon Ridge cultivators in at once. Wasn't he afraid of screwing things up? At this moment it was meaningless to think about this. In this closed environment, the power of the poisonous fog was gradually showing its effect, and Song Jue could already feel his strength rapidly declining. Although he had taken the detoxification pill immediately, the effect of the detoxification pill was extremely limited. If he didn't find a way to leave this place quickly, he was afraid that all 2,000 cultivators would be wiped out. Thinking of the possible consequences, Song Jue couldn't help but shudder. Killing 2,000 cultivators at the same time was something that had never happened in the history of the cultivation world of the 9 provinces, and it was impossible to happen. He had heard that thousands of Myriad Demon Ridge cultivators had died directly or indirectly at Lu Ye's hands during the Spirit Stream battlefield, but that was only hearsay. The number of cultivators that had been killed was only a number to him. But when this number turned into fresh lives, even Song Jue, who had killed many people, couldn't remain indifferent. He pushed his spirit energy and shouted, "What are you panicking for? Those below the third order realm, hurry up and clear the mine. Those above the third order realm, destroy the spirit array and kill Louis." Song Jue had to admit that he was quite experienced in making arrangements at this time, and his arrangements were undoubtedly the right medicine for the problem. As long as they could quickly clear the passage they came from, they would have a way out. No matter how powerful the poison was, as long as they didn't die immediately, there would always be a way to deal with it. While clearing the passage, killing Lu Yi would solve the problem at the source. Although killing Lu Yi wouldn't cure them of the poison, at the very least they wouldn't be threatened in this environment. In this closed environment, Lu Yi was their only enemy. In such a chaotic situation, people like Song Jue needed to stand up and preside over the overall situation. Following his shout, the panicked cultivators of the Myriad Demons Ridge seemed to have found their backbone and started to move. Colorful lights bloomed again as many Myriad Demon Ridge cultivators continued their previous actions, pushing forward to break through the spirit array arranged by Lu Yi. The cultivators below the third order realm also turned back and rushed towards the mine tunnel, preparing to clear the rubble in it. However, many cultivators staggered and fell to the ground after just a few steps. They didn't die immediately, but they had no strength left in their bodies. The flow of spirit energy in their bodies had almost stagnated, and they couldn't circulate it at all. Cultivators who couldn't circulate their spirit energy were stronger than ordinary people. In the end, only a dozen or so people managed to walk into the mine tunnel, but even they didn't know how long they could last. Hong hong hong. Violent sounds continued to erupt as the spirit energy fluctuations became extremely chaotic. At this moment, the entire mine was filled with poisonous fog, and even Lu Ye's position wasn't spared. He still stood there with his long saber, allowing the myriad demon-rich cultivators to approach him bit by bit. His face was as calm as an ancient well, and he even had the leisure to immerse himself in observing the reaction of his talent tree. Soon he found that the 10,000 poison bead he summoned this time was much more powerful than the last time, because the reaction of his talent tree was more intense than before. This undoubtedly meant that the 10,000 poison beads' toxicity was much stronger this time. This discovery surprised him a little. So far, Lu Yi had only used the 10,000 poison bead once, and that was in the Myriad Beast sealed world against the Black Tortoise sect master, Niu Meng. The situation at that time was really desperate. Although he had several Cloud River Realm 9th Order cultivators on his side, they couldn't fight back against Niu Meng, who had transformed into the core of the insect nest. Pang Dehai, who was disguised as a body cultivator, was almost beaten to death by Niu Meng. Even Zhou Hai, a sword cultivator known for his killing ability, couldn't cause any effective damage to Niu Meng. In the end, Lu Yi had no choice but to summon the 10,000 poison bead to attack both friend and foe. This weakened Niu Meng's strength, and together with Zhou Hai, they found an opportunity to break his beast transformation secret technique. At that time, he summoned the 10,000 poison bead because he had no other choice. After all, Lu Yi was immune to poison and others couldn't. Niu Meng in his beast form was undoubtedly very strong. After seeing the strength of the giant berserk ape, Lu Yi felt that Niu Meng in his beast form was almost at the level of an overlord. But even so, his strength was still weakened by the 10,000 poison bead. Even an overlord couldn't resist the power of the 10,000 poison bead, let alone these myriad demon-rich cultivators who had now entered the mine. Moreover, the 10,000 poison bead this time was even more poisonous than the last one. Lu Yi didn't know that the 10,000 poison bead was the condensation of Huaxi's cultivation. This thing could not only be used to fight enemies, but could also be used as a reserve for Huaxi's cultivation. In other words, when Huaxi broke through to the Cloud River realm in the future, she could swallow the 10,000 poison bead again to improve her cultivation. To be continued. Chapter 632. Now that Huaxi was in the Spirit Stream battlefield, her cultivation had reached its limit and she could no longer improve it, so she had to reduce her cultivation again and again to refine the myriad poison beads. The toxicity of the myriad poison beads was not only related to the amount of cultivation Huaxi consumed to refine them, but also to the toxicity of the poison she swallowed. The first time she gave the myriad poison bead to Lu Yi, Huaxi wasn't familiar with this method and had only done it for practice. Moreover, in order to prevent Lu Yi from seeing any clues and having unnecessary worries, she didn't consume too much of her cultivation. But later, as she refined more and more myriad poison beads, she became more and more familiar with it. This time, Huaxi consumed a lot more of her cultivation to refine the myriad poison beads that Lu Yi obtained. Furthermore, Huaxi had already found the source of the forest of 1,000 poisons, and had even created a poison pool in the deepest part of the forest. The last time Lu Yi went back to visit her, this woman was leisurely soaking in the poison pool. That was the manifestation of the myriad poison forest's poison source, which was many times more toxic than the poison mist she had swallowed. All these reasons led to one result. The 3 myriad poison beads that Lu Yi summoned this time were more than twice as toxic as the last one. This was something Lu Yi did not expect. If he had known about this, he would not have been willing to use up all 3 myriad poison beads and would have at least kept one. But now that he had used it, it was meaningless to think about it. The poison mist filled the entire mine, and no one was spared. Large patches of gray mist continued to rise from the talent tree in Lu Ye's body. He had the talent tree, which made him impervious to all poisons. As long as there was enough fuel in the talent tree, he did not have to worry about being affected by the poison. But the myriad demon-rich cultivators were in a different situation. Even if they had backup antidotes, they still could not resist the poison. The lower the cultivator's cultivation, the fiercer the reaction. At first, the cultivators below the third-order realm collapsed one after another. They did not die immediately, but the flow of spirit energy in their bodies had completely stagnated. They could not use any of their spirit energy and their bodies were weak. In this situation, if they did not find a way to detoxify the poison quickly, they would not survive. Gradually, fourth-order and fifth-order cultivators couldn't hold on any longer and collapsed. Cultivators with higher cultivations were still able to hold on for a while, but no matter who it was, they all felt their strength plummet. Fear and shock were spreading, and in order to destroy the formation as quickly as possible, the cultivators were all urging their spiritual power and using various methods, which accelerated the effects of the poison on their bodies. The cultivators of the Myriad Devil Ridge had never imagined that they would encounter such an inconceivable situation when so many of them rushed in to kill Lu Yi. It wasn't that they hadn't come into contact with poisons before. Their cultivation levels had reached the Cloud River tier, and they had experienced some hardships. They had also come into contact with a number of strange poisons. However, this was the first time that they had come into contact with such a tyrannical and unreasonable poison. While the Myriad Demon Ridge was in chaos, Lu Yi, who had been standing calmly in place, moved. He casually took out an array flag and waved it gently. Crack! A deafening clap of thunder reverberated throughout the sealed mine. Accompanied by the sound of thunder, a bolt of lightning appeared from above and smashed into the crowd. Ah! As the lightning struck, a scream rang out. No one knew which unlucky bastard had been struck. The strike of the lightning seemed to be a signal. After the first bolt of lightning fell, more and more bolts of lightning fell from the sky. The bright lightning pierced through the green poisonous fog and played the symphony of death. Crackling sounds could be heard incessantly. As far as the eye could see, there seemed to be countless lightning snakes descending from the sky. And at the top of the mine, a huge magic formation was emitting light. All kinds of mysterious patterns flickered continuously. Every time a bolt of lightning struck, it would be accompanied by a blood-curdling scream. Thunder Guiding Array. The killing array that Lu Yi had set up the most was the explosion array. This was because this array was simple enough and had great lethality. Once someone stepped into it, it could cause a certain degree of damage to the enemy. However, this didn't mean that he only knew how to set up explosion arrays. He had mastered many spirit runes. If he used them as the core of a spirit array, he could set up a corresponding spirit array. An array that used the Thunder Guiding Spirit rune as the core was called the Thunder Guiding Array. An array that used the Golden Arc Spirit rune as the core was called the Golden Arc Array. An array that used the Blazing Flame Spirit rune as the core was called the Blazing Flame Array. No one had expected that he would set up this spirit array on the rock wall above in advance. The Myriad Demon Ridge cultivators were only focused on breaking the spirit array in front of them. How could they have known that there was a great crisis above them? For a moment, the scene became even more lively as Lu Yi activated the power of the spirit array. Blazing white lightning, golden arcs of lightning, and fiery red snakes of fire fell from above like a torrential downpour as the spirit arrays operated. The power of these spirit arrays was actually not too great. Normally, even a 5th or 6th order cultivator would be able to withstand them. However, at this moment, many cultivators from Myriad Demon Ridge were affected by the poisonous fog and their strength had been greatly reduced. At this moment, the power of these spirit arrays was particularly lethal. The smell of burnt flesh accompanied by the smell of blood spread out. Many lives were annihilated in the green poisonous fog, one after another seemingly endless. The dense green poisonous fog filled every corner of the mine. Not only were the Myriad Demon Ridge cultivators unable to see Lu Ye's figure, but Lu Yi couldn't see them either. However, this had no effect on him. Right now, everyone in this mine was an enemy except for himself, so he only needed to guide the power of the spirit arrays to cover the places with the densest vitality. Hurry up and break the formation above. Someone finally reacted and shouted sternly. In an instant, many attacks blasted towards the rock wall above, causing rubble to fall and the spirit arrays to be destroyed one after another. At this time, the spirit arrays that Lu Yi had set up in the mine were almost flattened by the Myriad Demon Ridge cultivators. Although a large number of cultivators fell to the ground and couldn't get up, there were still some with stronger cultivations who could continue to hold on. However, when the furious myriad demon-rich cultivators arrived at Lu Ye's original position, they found that he was nowhere to be found. Lu Ye naturally couldn't just stand there and wait. Now that he was in such a chaotic and blind environment, he had enough space to perform perfectly. He did not even need to distinguish between friend and foe. Wherever he passed by, as long as there was life and aura, there would always be screams and the sound of blood splattering out with a slash of his saber. Song Jue's voice rang out amidst the chaos. Everyone, gather together and guard against ambushes. Report Lu Ye's position as soon as possible. However, his voice was soon drowned out by the chaotic shouting. Realizing that Lu Ye was wandering around and hunting, all the myriad demon-rich cultivators became nervous. Whenever someone dared to approach them, they would immediately use their killing moves to attack. For a time there were many accidental injuries, causing even more quarrels and curses. The scene became completely chaotic. Song Jue secretly cursed a group of people who couldn't be brought to the table, but he also knew that everyone would become nervous in such a situation. He was shocked to find that if the situation continued to develop like this, it wouldn't be impossible for Lu Yi to slaughter 2,000 people by himself. Without mentioning anything else, the cultivators below the fourth order were basically powerless to resist and were all lying limp on the ground. He had previously sent some third-order cultivators to clean up the collapsed mine tunnel, but those cultivators didn't last long and were now all lying there. The smell of blood became stronger and stronger, and the screams hadn't stopped since the beginning. Vitality was being annihilated in everyone's perception. In the pitch-black poisonous fog, Lu Yi was like a soul-sucking emissary. Everywhere he passed, there would be a rain of blood. The myriad demon-rich cultivators had no power to resist at all. Moreover, as time passed, the myriad demon-rich cultivators were more and more affected by the poisonous fog, and their strength became weaker and weaker. It became easier and easier for Lu Yi to kill them. Until a certain moment, Lu Yi encountered a troublesome character. Since the spirit array arranged on the top of the cave was destroyed, he had been wandering around to kill enemies. No matter what the opponent's cultivation was, he could basically finish them off with a single slash. But at this moment, when he slashed at a burly body cultivator, the latter's originally weak aura suddenly erupted with a powerful momentum. While blocking Lu Ye's slash with an arm guard-like spirit artifact, the burly body cultivator's other hand reached out to grab Lu Yi. Gritting his teeth, the burly body cultivator shouted, "Found you!" Lu Yi immediately reacted. This guy's weakness just now was either a disguise, or he had used some kind of secret technique to stimulate his strength. The moment the burly body cultivator attacked, his ninth order cultivation was also exposed. With so many myriad demon-rich cultivators, there must be a ninth order cultivator. Not to mention that Song Jue was a ninth order cultivator, there must be others. Therefore, even if Lu Yi was wandering and hunting, he didn't relax his vigilance. He had a slight impression of this burly body cultivator, who was standing not far from Song Jue just now. The ninth order body cultivator was naturally Wei Zhong. Although he and the other ninth order cultivators were shocked by Lu Ye's methods and ruthlessness, in the end, they all had extraordinary backgrounds and didn't panic in the face of such a situation. Instead, they remained dormant and waited for a good opportunity. Lu Yi attacking him was exactly what he wanted. As a result, Lu Yi would be exposed in front of him. Even if he couldn't capture Lu Yi immediately, as long as he was entangled for a moment, Song Jue and the others would definitely be able to react. At that time, everyone would join forces, and even if their strength was greatly reduced, it would still be enough to capture Lu Yi. As long as he could capture Lu Yi, the crisis would be averted, and all that was left was to clear the mine tunnel and leave. That was what Wei Zhong thought, but when he reached out to grab Lu Yi, he caught nothing but air. Lu Ye's reaction was undoubtedly faster than he expected. The moment he realized something was wrong, he took advantage of the momentum to retreat. At the same time, he raised his left hand and sent out a stream of light towards Wei Zhong. At this moment, Wei Zhong felt a chill run down his spine. It was an instinctive response to fatal crisis, but before he could react, a stream of light swept past him and passed through his body without any hindrance. bringing with it a spray of blood. To be continued. Chapter 633. Within the dark green fog, Wei Zhong lowered his head to look at his chest. There was a wound there that wasn't too obvious, but it was a fatal wound, because his heart had been pierced through. At the last moment of his life, Wei Zhong felt his broken heart beat weakly, and as his strength drained away, he fell to the ground with a thud. He had not expected that Lu Yi would have something that could take his life in a single blow. Even if his strength had declined, he was still a strong body cultivator, so how could he be so vulnerable? What he didn't know was that the artifact in Lu Ye's hand could even penetrate giant armor's defense in an instant. This artifact was the broken arrow Wei Kei had used at that time. Although giant armor was only a 5th-order cultivator now, in terms of physique and defense, he was not inferior to the 9th-order Wei Zhong. This broken arrow could break through giant armor's defense, so naturally it could also break through his. In addition, Lu Yi had caught him off guard, so it was only natural that he would end up like this. However, although this broken arrow was powerful, its only drawback was that it consumed a lot of spirit qi. Fortunately, Lu Yi had a spirit storage ring on his hand, and after such a long time, the spirit qi stored in his spirit storage ring had already been filled to the brim. After using this artifact, Lu Yi clearly felt that more than half of the spirit qi in his spirit storage ring had disappeared in an instant. In other words, even if he borrowed the spirit qi stored in his spirit storage ring, he could only use this broken arrow once in a short period of time. If he wanted to use it a second time, he would have to exhaust all the remaining spirit qi in his spirit storage ring as well as a portion of his own spirit qi. In addition to the huge consumption of spirit qi, the biggest problem with this broken arrow was the number of times it could be used. There were all kinds of strange artifacts, but without exception, they all had a limit to the number of times they could be used, and most of them were one-time consumables. This was the case with the tracking plate, the golden body token, and even the death arena. Although this broken arrow was not a one-time consumable, it could not be used too many times. When Lu Yi obtained it, there was already a crack on it, and now that it had been used once, the crack had obviously grown larger. If Lu Yi had time to observe, he would have been able to see that this broken arrow could only be used once more at most. However, at this moment, he didn't have the time to investigate the situation of the broken arrow. After killing Wei Zhong, the broken arrow flew back to his hand under his control. Although he had the upper hand in the current situation, with a large number of cultivators with low cultivation levels being like lambs waiting to be slaughtered, there were still some who had the power to resist. Killing a 9th-order body cultivator with lightning speed was enough to deter a small number of masters, making it easier for him to take action. Therefore, he would not use the broken arrow unless he had no other choice. This was indeed the case. The moment Wei Zhong made a move, Song Jue, Ning Zizai, and the other 9th-order masters noticed it and rushed over to provide support. However, in the next moment, Wei Zhong fell to the ground and his vitality dissipated. Under the cover of the poisonous fog, they couldn't see what had happened, but they could perceive that Wei Zhong's aura had been annihilated, which undoubtedly caused great shock to these 9th-order masters. Everyone's expressions changed drastically as they stopped in their tracks. Song Jue probed in a low voice, "Brother Wei?" There was no response. Song Jue swallowed his saliva with difficulty. The situation was getting worse. He didn't expect that Lu Yi could even kill Wei Zhong. Even if Wei Zhong was affected by the poisonous fog and couldn't exert his full strength, he was still a strong body cultivator. In fact, before this, Song Jue had been quite calm. Although the current situation was bad, and Lu Yi was hunting everywhere, the number of myriad demon-rich cultivators was still there, and there were even a few 9th-order cultivators guarding them. He always felt that Lu Yi would not be able to leave this place alive, unless Lu Yi could kill everyone. But when Wei Zhong died, this determination in his heart was shaken. Even Wei Zhong couldn't block Lu Ye's attack, so how could they? Go! Song Jue shouted in a low voice and rushed back in the direction they came from with a few of his fellow disciples. The myriad demon-rich cultivators with low cultivation couldn't be counted on, so they could only clean up the collapsed mine tunnel and leave this place quickly. Suddenly, a scream came from behind. It seemed to be junior brother Yan's voice. But Song Jue didn't dare to look back because he knew that even if he did, he wouldn't be able to see anything. When he arrived in front of the mine tunnel, Song Jue discovered that there were many people who had the same idea as him. At this time, many cultivators had already arrived at the collapsed mine tunnel and were trying to clear out the rubble. However, the crowd was too crowded and everyone was fleeing. There wasn't an effective organization, so they weren't able to clear out much of the tunnel. Instead, many myriad demon-rich cultivators were fighting each other as they rushed into the tunnel. In the poisonous fog, Lu Yi was still hunting. The dried blood on his clothes became sticky and wet again. The screams and cries of the myriad demon-rich cultivators came from all directions. A large number of them died from their own injuries. At this time, outside the mine tunnel, some myriad demon-rich cultivators who had heard the news gathered. These people received the news a little late, so they arrived a little late, so there weren't many of them. By the time they arrived, most of the myriad demon-rich cultivators had already entered the mine tunnel. The mine tunnel had also collapsed by 2 miles due to Yi's actions. Now, these cultivators stood at the entrance of the mine tunnel, listening attentively, their expressions changing. A Cloud River tier cultivator's sense of hearing was still very sharp, especially in an environment like a mine. Even the slightest sound would often be magnified. Thus, even if they were several kilometers away, they would still be able to faintly hear some strange sounds. Why are there so many screams coming from inside? Some cultivators wondered if they had heard wrongly. Did you hear that? 2,000 myriad demon-rich cultivators had rushed into the mine to kill Lu Yi. The battle should be over soon, but why were there endless screams coming from inside? Judging from these sounds, it seemed that a fierce battle had broken out inside. There are indeed screams. Someone nodded in agreement, indicating that he had also heard the screams. He guessed, could it be that Lu Yi has some helpers inside? If that was the case, those screams should be coming from Lu Yi and his helpers. At this moment, they must be surrounded by the myriad demon-rich cultivators. Senior brother Qin's team was also listening at the entrance of the mine. They looked at each other with solemn expressions. They didn't know whether Lu Yi had helpers inside or not, but they knew that this matter was completely different from what they had expected. Coupled with Ghost Shadow's previous warning, everyone's hearts were heavy, as if something extremely bad was about to happen. These unimaginable thoughts appeared in their hearts, but they were quickly extinguished. They instinctively felt that such a thing was impossible. But what if it was really happening? That would undoubtedly correspond to Ghost Shadow's warning. They didn't rush in with the crowd, which was equivalent to saving their lives. At this moment, 2 streams of light quickly flew over from not far away. The powerful aura they emitted was clearly something that only 9th Order cultivators could possess. They landed at the entrance of the mine and revealed 2 figures. They were 2 men. If Lu Yi was here, he would definitely recognize these 2 as Xiaoyang and Tansheng. After the Holy Eve Spirit Earthfire Prairie was killed, these 2 left, returning Heaven Valley early because Xiaoyang concluded that Lu Yi and the others would definitely use the Heaven's Fate Pillar to escape back to the 9 states after encountering an unresolvable crisis, so they didn't stay to waste time. They originally planned to wait until a month later, when Lu Yi entered the Cloud River battlefield again to find a way to find out his whereabouts. But they didn't expect that things would develop completely differently from what Xiaoyang had expected. Lu Yi didn't escape back to the 9 states. Instead, he made a deal with the myriad demon-rich cultivators besieging returning Heaven Valley. After that, he hid in the dark and attacked the invaders in Great Mang Mountain. In the end, his whereabouts were exposed here, and he was blocked in the mine by the myriad demon-rich cultivators. Xiaoyang and Tansheng were originally far away from this area. But after receiving the news, they hurriedly rushed over and finally arrived. Sweeping his gaze, Xiaoyang asked, "Is Lu Yi inside?" A cultivator nodded. "I heard that he is inside." "What's the situation now?" The cultivator shook his head. "We just arrived, so we're not too sure." "Is there anything you know?" Tansheng asked from the side. Senior brother Qin thought for a moment and stepped forward, saying, "Half a day ago, nearly 2,000 fellow Taoists charged in under the lead of senior brother Song Jue and the others from Deep Rainbow Hall. But for some reason the mine suddenly collapsed. Now the people inside are trapped and the people outside can't enter. Also, it seems that a very fierce battle broke out inside, and many people died." While senior brother Qin was saying this, Xiaoyang and Tansheng also heard faint screams coming from the depths of the mine. The two of them couldn't help but feel strange. Xiaoyang frowned. How many people are there with Lu Ye? Senior brother Qin said. It's said that he's alone. I'm not sure if it's true or not. It was very difficult to get any useful information from here. Xiaoyang and Tan Sheng looked at each other and flashed into the mine. Seeing this, the others hurriedly followed. Only senior brother Qin's team was still standing outside, unmoved. They didn't follow the crowd before, and it was too late to go in now. Moreover, with Ghost Shadow's warning and the various changes, they didn't dare to rashly go in. The reason why they stayed here was mainly to see what the final result of this matter would be. However, in the eyes of senior brother Qin and the others, no matter what the result was, Lu Ye would undoubtedly die. In such a situation, there was no way he could survive. In the mine tunnel, Xiaoyang and Tan Sheng hurried for less than 2 miles before the road ahead was blocked. At this point, the screams and cries of pain became even clearer. Something was wrong. Judging from the sounds, the battle that broke out inside was clearly very fierce. If Lu Ye was alone, it was impossible for him to do such a thing. Could it be that he had many people in ambush and was currently fighting with the people of Myriad Devil Ridge? To be continued. Chapter 634. Inside the mine, blood flowed like a river and corpses were everywhere. The cultivators who died under Lu Ye's blade were actually only a small portion of them. Some of them died from the very beginning of the formation, some of them died from their own accidental injuries, and most of them died from the corrosion of the poisonous fog. The 10,000 poison pills that Lu Ye used this time were far more poisonous than he had expected. The lower the cultivator, the weaker their resistance to poison. Especially cultivators below the 5th order, even if they took the detoxification pill, they had no resistance to the poisonous fog. The number of cultivators below the 5th order was the highest. At first, they only felt their spirit chi stagnate, their bodies weak and dizzy, but as time passed, the poison took effect and their vitality quickly faded away. In the end, they quietly turned into corpses. Those who were still standing were all cultivators above the 5th order, but no matter how high their cultivation was, they all felt exhausted and powerless. Gradually, the screams and cries in the mine became sparse. It wasn't because Lu Ye stopped, but because there were fewer and fewer people alive. The thick poisonous fog also gradually thinned, allowing people to slowly see the scene a few meters away. Somewhere in the mine, Mingzhi's face was covered with a layer of green, and behind him were several Holy Eve's spiritual land cultivators. Originally there were dozens of them, but now there were only a few left. The others were all lying on the ground, some killed, some poisoned to death. Although they were still alive, they all looked terrified, and there were even female cultivators who were sobbing softly. Mingzhi couldn't figure out how things had developed like this. Just like how he didn't think that Fire Prairie would die at the hands of Lu Ye, it seemed that as long as he faced this evil star of the Blue Blood sect, all kinds of unimaginable things could happen. Returning to Heaven Spirit Land's location was exposed by Tu Guanxiong. A large number of Myriad Demons rich cultivators gathered in front of Returning to Heaven Valley, and Mingzhi led the defeated Holy Eve's spiritual land cultivators back. Originally, they wanted to witness Lu Ye's death with their own eyes, but they didn't get to do so. After that, Lu Ye used the transmission array to leave Returning to Heaven Spirit Land and hunted Myriad Demons rich cultivators in the depths of Grand Mang Mountains, causing the Holy Eve's spiritual land to lose some people. After that, hearing that Lu Ye was hiding here, Mingzhi rushed over with his men. They had thought that they would be able to see Lu Ye's death this time, but in the end, the prey had become the hunter. The Myriad Demons Ridge, who had the advantage in numbers, had suffered heavy casualties. Why? Lu Ye was just a 5th order cultivator, so how could he accomplish such a feat? The poison fog churned in front of him. Following a short and sharp cry, a figure broke through the fog. Although he could not see the face clearly, Mingzhi would never forget that familiar figure. Lu Ye. The other party had obviously noticed them as well. Without any hesitation, he charged over with his saber. Mingzhi roared angrily and stepped forward. The two figures crossed each other. Blood spurted out from Mingzhi's neck and his body fell to the ground. At the last moment of his life, he heard the screams of the Holy Eve's spiritual land cultivators who had been hiding behind him. If he had been at his peak, His 8th order wise philosopher realm cultivation would have been enough to fight against Lu Yi, but the power of the 10,000 poison bead had reduced his strength by more than half, so he couldn't even withstand a single blow from Lu Yi. At this point, all the cultivators who had left the Holy Eve's spiritual land had been wiped out. In the Holy Eve's spiritual land, Tu Guanxiong felt the battlefield marks disappear one after another. His face was ashen. Not long ago, Mingzhe had sent him a message to inform him of the situation here. He had originally wanted to borrow the hands of others to take revenge for fire-burning prairie, but in the end, he had caused the Holy Eve's spiritual land to suffer even greater losses. Ning Zizai hid behind a large rock and tried his best to restrain his aura. Although he was so upset that he wanted to vomit blood because of the poison, he did not dare to make any movements. He was not a ghost cultivator and could not hide himself, but in this mine filled with poison fog, doing so would undoubtedly reduce the risk of being exposed. He even felt that as long as he was careful enough, Lu Yi would not discover him. However, in the end he was thinking too much. In the poison fog, everyone's vision was greatly affected. They could only rely on their perception, and perception was something that Lu Yi was best at. Even a ghost cultivator like Ying Wuji could not get close to him at will, let alone others who were not ghost cultivators. While Lu Yi was killing the enemies, some people who thought they were smart lied on the ground and pretended to be dead, trying to deceive him. But there was no way to hide one's vitality. Those who pretended to be dead were really dead. The scattered screams gradually approached Ning Zizai's position. Finally, Ning Zizai saw a figure coming out of the green fog and rushing toward his position. He knew that he had been exposed. Without any hesitation, he summoned his spirit artifact and faced Lu Yi head-on. However, after only 3 breaths, his vision began to tilt, and the last thing he saw was a headless corpse. Lu Yi found that there were a few 9th order cultivators among the myriad demons rich cultivators who came this time, and it was not just the few that appeared on the map. There were at least 3 or 4 people hiding their cultivation in the crowd. Originally they probably had some plans, but after the power of the 10,000 poison bead broke out, all their plans fell through. They could not kill Lu Yi immediately. As time passed and the poison broke out, the strength they could exert became weaker and weaker. In the end they were all killed by Lu Yi one by one. The huge mine was noisy 2 hours ago, but at this moment it was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. Only Lu Ye's heavy breathing could be heard. Although most of the tens of thousands of myriad demons rich cultivators did not die under his blade, even a small part of them made him feel tired. The spirit energy in his storage ring had been exhausted, and even the spirit energy in his body was only left with about 30%. It was conceivable that without the storage ring, Lu Yi would not have the capital to kill all the myriad demons rich cultivators even if he had used 3 10,000 poison beads this time. Compared to the consumption of spirit energy, the consumption of physical strength was more serious. His saber-wielding right arm had become numb, and his whole body was filled with an indescribable sense of weakness, as if he could collapse at any time. This wasn't the most difficult battle Lu Yi had experienced, because from beginning to end, the enemies he killed basically didn't put up much resistance against him. The only one who posed a little danger to him was the 9th order body cultivator. But that 9th order body cultivator had still been killed by the broken arrow. Because the mine was filled with poisonous fog, Yi couldn't help much in this battle. Lu Yi had already put Hu Po into his spirit beast pouch in advance. If Hu Po was still there, he could borrow some strength from Hu Po and the situation would be better. There was only one last group of people left. Lu Yi carried his long saber and walked towards the mine tunnel step by step. At this moment, dozens of people had gathered in the mine tunnel, frantically clearing the gravel in the mine tunnel in an attempt to escape. However, the mine tunnel was not spacious and could only accommodate a few people walking side by side at most. Coupled with the fact that they were poisoned, their efficiency was not high. Until now, they had cleared less than 500 meters of gravel. When they heard the sound of footsteps slowly approaching, the group of people's faces changed drastically. They looked back and saw Lu Ye's blood-stained figure walking into the mine tunnel step by step, carrying endless and cold murderous intent. The cultivators who were still alive felt their scalps go numb. Are all the people in the mine dead? That's 2,000 people. How could they all die so quickly? But if they listened carefully, there was no movement in the mine tunnel. At this moment, Lu Yi was here and there was no hope of escape. How could these people, who were greatly weakened by the poison, resist? What puzzled them even more was why Lu Yi was not affected by the poison. After all, even a ninth-order Cloud River Realm cultivator could not resist the poisonous fog. At the very back of the crowd, a figure stood in the middle of the tunnel. This person wasn't tall or sturdy, and was clearly not a body cultivator. He had also been poisoned, and his exposed skin was a dark green color. But as he stood there, he gave off the feeling of a man who could hold back 10,000 enemies. Even facing Lu Yi, who had killed people like flies, there wasn't the slightest trace of fear on his face. In fact, there was even a bit of eagerness to try. Lu Yi saw this person's abnormality and did not know what this guy was thinking, but he was not in the mood to think too much about it. Now that all the myriad demon-rich cultivators who were still alive were in front of him, as long as he killed them, this plan could be completed perfectly. Lu Yi believed that after this, he would be able to live in peace for a long time. In the future, when his cultivation improved, he would be able to run amok in the Cloud River battlefield just like he did in the Spirit Stream battlefield. Exerting force in his legs, he leaped forward. The fiery red blade light cut through the poison fog, and the mountain pan saber slashed towards the cultivators, blocking his path. A light curtain suddenly appeared in front of Lu Yi, blocking his path. Lu Yi's attack landed on the light curtain, but it only managed to dent it slightly, unable to break it. A protective array. Lu Yi took 2 steps back and sized up the myriad Devil Ridge cultivators who were wrapped up in the defensive array. He recalled Yi saying that a very powerful array cultivator had come to the myriad Devil Ridge, and that the explosion array he had set up in the mine had been broken by him one by one. It must be this person. Brother Sinan, well done. Song Jue's weak cheers came from the depths of the mine tunnel. He really did not expect that in such a crisis, Sinan would be at the back of the mine tunnel and block Lu Yi with a protective array. He did not even notice when Sinan had set up the protective array. This mine tunnel was narrow, and once the protective array was activated, the entire mine tunnel would be filled. Unless Lu Yi could break the protective array, he would not be able to pass. This was a pleasant surprise. As long as Sinan could hold on long enough, they could clean up the mine tunnel and escape with peace of mind. The premise was that they did not die from the poison before then. Therefore, Song Jue urged, Brother Sinan, you must hold on. Inside the protective array's light curtain, Sinan's face was also full of weakness, but his expression was very confident. Dan said, don't worry with me here, he can't come over. Chapter 635. In the mine tunnel, Sinan stood alone in front of Lu Yi. The light curtain of the protective formation formed an impregnable barrier, isolating Lu Yi's killing intent and bringing a rare sense of security to Song Jue and the others. Lu Yi looked at the protective light curtain in front of him with a calm expression. The light curtain formed by such a hastily arranged protective formation was actually not very strong. After all, it had not accumulated enough spiritual power. Generally, the longer the protective formation was set up, the more spiritual power it accumulated, and the stronger its protective power would be. Moreover, the range of this protective formation was too small, so its natural upper limit would not be too strong. However, the formation was presided over by Sinan, so it was not easy for Lu Yi to break it by force. Besides, in his current state, it was not suitable for him to break the formation by force. However, Lu Yi never relied on brute force to break the formation. There was a faint flash of light in his eyes. With the help of the insight spiritual tattoos, he observed the nodes and flaws of the formation in front of him. The scene in his field of vision changed, and the traces of colorful spiritual force could be clearly seen. The protective light curtain, which looked as flat as a mirror with the naked eye, had a tiny flaw under the observation of the insight spiritual tattoo. It had to be said that this guy named Sinan had very high attainments in formations. So far, Lu Yi had not met any decent formation cultivator, but Sinan was definitely one. Right at this moment, Sinan said, I've long heard that fellow Taoist Lu's attainments in formations are extremely high, but the formations you set up seem to be ordinary. I've cracked your formations, but can you crack mine? Although he had not fought with Lu Yi directly, for a formation cultivator, setting up and breaking a formation was already a fight. He had cracked so many of Lu Ye's explosive formations in the mine tunnel before, and in the end, he even forced Lu Yi to activate many formations in advance. From his point of view, Lu Ye's attainments in formations were probably not as good as his, which was why he dared to block him here. Because he was confident that he could stop Lu Yi with his protective formation. Almost at the same time as his voice fell, Lu Yi raised his hand and shot out a formation flag. The formation flag flew out and accurately embedded in the protective light curtain. Sinan looked at this scene in astonishment, because he clearly felt that the position where the formation flag was embedded was the node of his protective light curtain. The defensive power of this position was the weakest, which could also be said to be the weak point of the entire formation light curtain. Others might not know the nodes of the formation, but as the person who set up and presided over the formation, how could he not know? For formations like protective formations or trapping formations that were formed by light screens, using nodes to break through them was the most effective method. However, no matter how high a formation cultivator's attainments in the Tao of formations were, it was not so easy to find the nodes of a formation. This required direct contact with the light screen of the formation and a slow search. Only then would it be possible to find it. Moreover, it was only a possibility. Perhaps the node found was wrong. Especially now that he was in charge of the formation, he could change the speed of the flow of spiritual power on the light curtain with a single thought to conceal the location of the nodes. Was it a coincidence? Otherwise, how could it be so accurate? With a thought, he instinctively took control of the grand array, and the flow of spiritual energy on the light curtain suddenly increased several times. As a result, the positions of the nodes of the grand array also rapidly changed. Another formation flag flew out and was embedded in another node of the grand array. Then a third, a fourth. Sinan's eyes bulged, and he looked like he had seen a ghost in broad daylight as he exclaimed, "Impossible." At this moment, he finally realized that the scene just now was not a coincidence. If the first time was a coincidence, could it be the second, third, and fourth time? Lu Yi could actually see the location of the nodes of the grand array? But how could he, a fifth-order Cloud River Realm cultivator, have such an outrageous ability? What he saw in front of him had already exceeded his understanding. At this moment he finally realized that the situation was not good. Regardless of whether Lu Yi's level of spirit arrays was inferior to his, at least in terms of breaking spirit arrays, he was absolutely incomparable. It was ridiculous that just a few breaths ago, he thought that with him presiding over the protective spirit array, it would be impregnable. The 4 formation flags were embedded in the nodes of the grand array. Lu Yi stepped forward, raised his hand, and pressed it on the light curtain of the grand array. The spirit chi around his body surged, and with his palm as the center, a fiery red spirit chi flowed out. Under his delicate control, a small yin and yang energy quickly spread out. Sinan looked horrified because as the yin and yang elements spread out, the flow of spiritual power on the light curtain of the big formation became more and more stagnant, which gave him a huge resistance for no reason, hindering his control of the big formation. Sinan gritted his teeth, waved the formation flags in his hand, and urged his spiritual energy to control the spirit array to resist Lu Yi. However, in just 5 breaths, the flow of spiritual energy on the light curtain of the grand array almost stagnated. Without the flow of spiritual energy, the grand array was like a pool of stagnant water, unable to play any role. Lu Yi's big hand on the light curtain suddenly exerted force. With a crash, the light curtain of the grand array shattered. Sinan's expression became absent-minded at this moment, as if his mind had been shattered along with the light curtain of the grand array. With a flash of his blade, Lu Yi passed Sinan and approached the mine tunnel step by step with his blood-stained saber. Behind him came the sound of Sinan's body falling to the ground. He was an 8th-order Dharma cultivator, so his physique was not strong. The corrosion of the poison was more serious than that of other 8th-order cultivators. After the spirit array he relied on failed, he could only wait to die in front of Lu Yi. His figure fell to the ground while his eyes were opened wide, and he died with everlasting regret. It seemed that even until the end, he still didn't dare believe that the formation he'd set up was actually so weak and easily destroyed by Qian Shi. It was even to the extent that at the last moment of his life, he'd aroused extreme doubt towards his attainments in the Tao of formations. He was thinking too much. In terms of attainments in array Tao, Lu Yi was indeed better than him, but if he broke the spirit array step by step, it would not be so easy. But Lu Yi broke the spirit array with the help of insight spirit inscriptions. In this world, there were many spirit tattooists who could construct insight spirit inscriptions, but Lu Yi was the only one who dared to use insight spirit inscriptions on his eyes. Because no matter how experienced a spirit tattooist was, he could not guarantee that the spirit inscriptions he constructed would succeed. Eyes were the weakness of cultivators. Even physique cultivators, who were famous for their strong physique, had extremely fragile eyes. If the insight spirit inscriptions were added to the eyes, it would be a good thing, but if it failed, it would inevitably cause some indelible damage to the eyes. So since ancient times, no spirit tattooist dared to do so. Lu Yi dared to do so because the insight spirit inscriptions were attached to his talent tree. There was no possibility of failure when constructing them. With a thought, the spirit inscriptions were completed automatically. In the depths of the mine tunnel, Song Jue and the others, who had just felt a sense of security, felt chills all over their bodies. Just a few breaths ago, Sinan had said something like, "Can you break my spirit array?" But in the blink of an eye, the spirit array was broken, and Sinan was killed. In great panic, the surviving cultivators of Myriad Demon's Ridge couldn't help laughing at Sinan's overestimation of his strength. It was like an ant standing in front of an elephant and asking the elephant if it could trample it to death. As a result, the elephant stepped on the ant and killed it. "Luya!" Song Jue gritted his teeth and shouted, "You are really a disaster." More than 2,000 people, and in just 4 hours only a few dozen of them were left, and they were only facing a single enemy. Even Sinan's spirit array could not stop him for a moment. One person slaughtered 2,000 people. In the cultivation world of 9 regions, such a thing had never happened before. It was unheard of, and they didn't even dare to think about it. But today such a thing happened right under their noses. Song Jue only hated Ing Wuji's incompetence. Previously in Huitian Valley, if Ing Wuji had been careful enough and had not been discovered in advance, he might have been able to kill Lu Ya, and there wouldn't have been all kinds of subsequent troubles. Now in the operation to besiege and kill Lu Ya, countless cultivators of Myriad Demon's Ridge had died, but Lu Ya was still alive and well. "Fellow Taoists," Song Jue raised his arm and shouted, "We have no way out. If you want to live, follow me to kill this guy." He didn't say any more demagogic words because it was meaningless. In the current situation, they had no way to retreat, and only one side could survive between them and Lu Yi. Although they were all poisoned and their strength was greatly reduced, after all, they had the numbers. Moreover, the density of the poisonous fog had decreased, so it was not as dark as before. So, there was still a chance. As soon as he finished speaking, Song Jue was the first to rush up. It was not that he was unafraid of death, but he was the strongest among everyone present. If he didn't set an example, the situation would only get worse. Only if he took action first would the others have the confidence to fight against Lu Yi. But soon, with a muffled groan, Song Jue was sent flying, blood spurting out midair. Yang Kai couldn't help feeling shocked. He hadn't even been able to withstand a single blow from Lu Yi. One had to know that even if Yang Kai had been poisoned, he could still display strength comparable to a 6th-order master, while Lu Yi was just a 5th-order cultivator who was on the verge of death. How could he still display such strength? The narrowness of the mine limited the strength of the Myriad Demon's Ridge cultivators. At most, only 3 or 4 of them could besiege Lu Yi at the same time. Lu Yi walked forward step by step, the mountain coiling saber constantly slashing out fiery red saber lights. Screams and cries of alarm rang out from time to time, and wherever he passed, corpses fell into pools of blood. In just the time it took to brew a cup of tea, only a few people remained from the dozens of people who were still resisting stubbornly. Even these few people were all injured, and their faces were filled with despair. The artifact box at his waist buzzed as 9 streams of light flew out, accompanied by muffled groans. The few cultivators who were still struggling fell to the ground. Only Song Jue still had some vitality left, but his injuries were not light. He had attacked Lu Yi twice before and was sent flying by Lu Ye's saber each time. There was a huge cut on his chest, and his beating heart was faintly visible. At this moment he was leaning against the cave wall, looking at Lu Yi, who was walking towards him step by step with despair. Chapter 636. Walking forward, Lu Yi looked down at Song Jue condescendingly. Song Jue spat out a mouthful of blood at Lu Yi. One day someone stronger than you will kill you. I will wait for you on the road to the Yellow Springs. Putting aside all kinds of schemes and bewitchment, Song Jue was a courageous person. Even before death, he showed no signs of cowardice and looked very calm. Lu Yi pressed his saber against Song Jue's chest and said calmly, "Don't make it sound like I'm an evil person. I just wanted to cultivate peacefully and return to Heaven Valley. You forced me out. You brought all of this upon yourselves." While speaking, he suddenly bent down and whispered in Song Jue's ear, "After I kill you, I will return to the 9 states and enter the Spirit Stream battlefield again to destroy your Abyss Rainbow Hall station. From now on, I will enter the Spirit Stream battlefield every 2 months." At the moment of life and death, Song Jue was fearless. However, when Lu Yi said this, he suddenly became agitated. "You dare!" The saber pierced his body and slowly penetrated deep into his heart. Song Jue's eyes widened as he held the saber with both hands, allowing the sharp blade to cut his hands until they were dripping with blood. "Do you think I dare?" Lu Yi stood up straight, his slightly narrowed eyes full of contempt. Blood spurted out from Song Jue's chest as the saber was pulled out. His body fell limply as the light in his eyes quickly dimmed. Shaking off the blood on the mountain-coiling saber, Lu Yi sheathed it and walked along the tunnel into the mine. After searching the mine and confirming that there were no signs of living people, he let out a long breath and sat down on the ground, his whole body spread out. He had consumed too much spirit energy and physical strength. Although he was not at the end of his rope, he was close. Previously, when he decided to leave the Taimong Mountains, he did not think that there would be such a development in the future. It was just that he inadvertently found this mine, which gave birth to some plans in his heart. Although there were some twists and turns, it was still under control. Now, the mine was filled with the corpses of myriad demon-rich cultivators. Among them, there were 7 or 8 ninth-order cultivators. There were even cultivators from first-grade sects like Song Jue. It could be said that the myriad demons rich had suffered a great loss this time. If news of this spread, it would definitely alarm the entire battlefield of the Cloudy River and even the 9 states. Lu Yi's name would be noticed by those Spirit Sea Realm cultivators again. In the future, Lu Yi would be suppressed even more. There was nothing to regret. Even without this incident, the Myriad Devil Ridge had always been targeting and suppressing him. However, they had never succeeded. On the contrary, he had been growing rapidly under the suppression. It could be said that without the suppression of the Myriad Devil Ridge, his growth might not have been so fast. In a way, he had to thank the Myriad Devil Ridge for targeting him. Although he was tired, it was not wise to stay here for long. The main reason was that the mine was filled with poisonous fog. Although Lu Yi was immune to all poisons, the talent tree needed fuel to purify and burn the toxins that invaded his body. Therefore, the longer he stayed here, the greater his losses would be. Therefore, even if Lu Yi wanted to fall asleep, he only rested for less than an incense stick's worth of time before quickly getting up. So many people from the Myriad Devil Ridge had died. Each of them had at least 2 or 3 storage bags and various spirit weapons in their hands. This was a huge fortune. Lu Yi's figure shuttled through the pools of blood and many corpses, collecting the storage bags and spirit weapons scattered on the ground. While he was busy, a message suddenly came from the battlefield imprint. Lu Yi hurriedly checked and found that it was from Yi. Someone was clearing the gravel in the mine at the other end of the tunnel, and the 2 leaders were Xiaoyang and Tansheng. Lu Yi could not help but sigh. These 2 bastards were really haunting him. Moreover, they were very lucky. If they had followed the 2,000 cultivators in before, they would have definitely died here. However, they had clearly come too late. Now that they were blocked by the collapsed mine, they had instead escaped with their lives. The cultivators outside the mine were not corroded by the poisonous fog and their strength was not damaged. Therefore, the efficiency of clearing the mine was very high. According to Yi, they would be able to completely open the mine in less than an hour. There was not much time left. Lu Ye's movements became faster and faster. In less than an hour, Lu Ye had collected all the spoils of war. Although there were certainly some that he had missed, there was no time to slowly search. He rushed into the mine and walked to the collapsed mine. He listened carefully and indeed heard some voices and the sound of gravel being cleared from the other side. If he could hear the voices, it meant that the cultivators on the other side were not far away. Lu Ye hurriedly took Hu Pa out of the spirit beast bag. Yi appeared at the right time and rushed into Hu Po's body. Lu Ye stuffed Hu Pa back into the spirit beast bag, and then returned to the mine with a huge bag. He had already dispelled the forbidden space formation in advance. He leaped up and headed straight for a wall in the depths of the mine. After a short while, the lines of the formation on the wall flashed and the space distorted. Lu Ye's figure disappeared. Song Jue's guess was right. Lu Ye had indeed set up a transmission formation here in advance. However, it was not on the ground but on the rock wall to the side. In his plan to poison the cultivators of the Myriad Devil Ridge, the chances of success were not small. However, he still had to be prepared. The transmission formation he set up in advance was his escape route. If the effects of the 10,000 poison pills did not meet his expectations, he would immediately use the transmission formation to leave this place. In the end, the effects of the 10,000 poison pills were better than he expected. It could be said that the deaths of the 2,000 cultivators of the Myriad Devil Ridge were 70% due to the 10,000 poison pills. There were too many cultivators with low cultivation levels who were poisoned to death. One must know that these 10,000 poison pills were refined by Wuxia when she was in the spirit stream stage. It was already so powerful. It was hard to imagine how terrifying the power of the 10,000 poison pills would be after Wuxia advanced to the Cloud River stage. What would happen if she advanced to the True Lake stage and Divine Sea stage in the future? If she really had the chance to advance to the Divine Sea stage in the future, there would be no one in the 9 continents that she could not poison to death. Lu Ye had long known that Wuxia must have obtained an incredible inheritance. However, after this battle, Lu Ye discovered that the inheritance Wuxia had obtained was even more terrifying than he had imagined. In the mine, Lu Ye's figure disappeared as the transmission formation activated. After 3 breaths, the explosion formation activated in advance showed its power and blasted the location of the transmission formation into a mess. The violent tremors and sounds alarmed the cultivators of the Myriad Devil Ridge, who were cleaning up the rubble at the other end of the mine. Xiaoyang and Tan Sheng, who were in the lead, were even more bewildered. Since an hour ago, the movements from inside the mine gradually became sparse until there were no more sounds coming out. No one knew what the situation inside the mine was, but Xiaoyang and Tan Sheng both felt a little uneasy. After a long time, a cry of surprise suddenly sounded, "It's open!" Accompanied by the cheers of that cultivator, a gap indeed appeared in the sealed mine. However, before everyone could rejoice, a dark green fog gushed out from the gap. A few cultivators near the gap were caught off guard and inhaled the fog. Immediately, they felt dizzy and their bodies went limp. "It's poisonous!" A cry of surprise sounded and the cultivators all retreated. "Get out of the way!" Xiaoyang shouted. Wielding his blade, he hacked forward. A blade beam shot out to destroy the final layer of obstructions before him. Broken rocks fell and the passageway was completely opened up. However, even more poisonous mist surged out along with the air currents, forcing the group of cultivators who had come forward to investigate the situation to back away in a wretched manner. In the end, the cultivators had no choice but to use their spiritual power to blow the poisonous fog back. Gradually, the scene in the depths of the mine was imprinted in everyone's vision. Everyone's faces paled when they saw it. In the depths of the mine, corpses were scattered everywhere. Blood flowed all over the ground and gathered into a stream, dyeing the ground red. "That's Senior Marshal Brother Song Jue." Someone saw Song Jue's figure on the cave wall and said in a trembling voice. This person had seen Song Jue outside Hutian Valley before. It had only been a few days, so he naturally recognized him at a glance. However, the high-spirited Ninth Order Master outside Hutian Valley was now half lying there like a pile of mud. His eyes were wide open, as if he had died with a grievance. Even the expression on his face was still filled with fear and unwillingness, as if he had heard something that terrified him before he died. Song Jue was dead, and more people had died not far from him. The mine was even quieter. Everyone felt a chill run down their spines as an uncontrollable thought surfaced in their minds. Someone shouted in a trembling voice, "Is there anyone else inside?" Only his voice echoed, but there was no response. There was the sound of someone swallowing their saliva with great difficulty. "I'll go in and take a look." Xiaoyang felt that the situation inside was not right, but he heard that 2,000 people from Myriad Demon Ridge had entered this mine. It was impossible that all of them had died, right? "Be careful," Tansheng warned. Xiaoyang nodded and urged his spiritual power to protect himself. Then he swallowed a detoxification pill and rushed inside. In just a dozen breaths of time he rushed out from inside. His expression was extremely solemn, and there was a faint layer of green on his face. "What's the situation?" Tansheng asked. Xiaoyang shook his head. "They're all dead." Even though he had guessed it, Tansheng still found it hard to believe when Xiaoyang said this. "They're all dead?" There were 2,000 people. If there were not 2,000 pigs, how could they all die? He suddenly thought of something. "Is Luya also dead?" "I'm not sure," Xiaoyang shook his head. Although the poisonous fog in the mine was gradually thinning, it was not yet time for people to stay inside. Even though Xiaoyang was a 9th Order master, he could not stay inside for too long. After a dozen breaths, he only took a quick glance, but the scene in his field of vision was like purgatory. Although he did not check carefully, he was sure that all the Myriad Demon Ridge cultivators who had entered the mine before were dead. Chapter 637. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, it would have been hard to imagine what kind of scene it was when more than 2,000 people died in a mine. Moreover, those were 2,000 Cloud River Realm cultivators, with many 8th or 9th Order masters among them. It had been a long time since such a major event had happened on the Cloud River battlefield, so even if this news was only known to the cultivators of the Myriad Demon Ridge at first, in just half a day, everyone on the Cloud River battlefield knew about it. The Cloud River battlefield was shaken. The 9 states was shaken. As time passed, more and more details were revealed. It was not a coincidence that more than 2,000 cultivators had gathered together. They were chasing after Liu Ye of the Jade Blood Sect. Before this, they had received news that Liu Ye was seriously injured and was hiding in the mine to heal. They thought it would be a strong encirclement battle, but somehow more than 20 million Devil Ridge cultivators died. Combined with the situation left behind at the scene, many cultivators were killed by poison, and those who had obvious external injuries all had traces of poisoning. In other words, Liu Ye had obtained a highly toxic substance from somewhere, and used it in that claustrophobic environment. The mine was sealed, and the Myriad Demon Ridge cultivators had no hope of escaping. In the end they were all wiped out. In fact, before Xiaoyang and Tansheng brought people to investigate the situation inside the mine, a lot of news had already been spread. Many Myriad Demon Ridge cultivators, such as Mingzhou of the Holy Eve spiritual land, told their fellow disciples what happened in the mine before they died. Combined with the various information gathered from the scene, everyone could almost imagine the despair of the 2,000 people at that time. More than 2,000 people were trapped in a claustrophobic environment and slowly lost the power to resist. Those with weak cultivations were directly poisoned to death, and those with high cultivations were killed by Liu Ye one by one. In the end it created that hellish scene. Liu Ye again. Back when he was still in the Spirit Stream realm, he had caused quite a stir in the Spirit Stream battlefield, and had even alerted the Spirit Sea realm cultivators on several occasions. That was especially true after his cultivation base had reached the 9th heaven, and the entire Spirit Stream battlefield had fallen under his shadow. His promotion from the Spirit Stream realm to the Cloud River realm was stable for a period of time. Only the opening of the hunting ground last time caused some disturbances. But that disturbance couldn't be compared to this one. 20 million Devil Ridge cultivators were poisoned to death by one person. How bizarre and terrifying. Along with the news there were many questions. Where did Liu Ye get such a poisonous thing? In the entire 9 prefectures, there were many poisons that could kill cultivators at the Cloud River tier. However, there were very few that could kill so many cultivators at once. Moreover, those poisons were not things that ordinary cultivators at the Cloud River tier could come into contact with. Even the Tianji treasure trove would not sell them. That was because these poisons were things that could break the balance. Tianji treasure trove had always been fair and just, so these kinds of things that could break the balance would definitely not appear in the Tianji treasure trove. Moreover, so many cultivators from the Myriad Demon's Ridge had died. Was Wuxia dead? Many cultivators from the Myriad Devil Ridge were poisoned to death. However, there were still many cultivators with higher cultivation and stronger strength who could still fight. Even if their strength was greatly reduced, Wuxia alone should not be a match for them. But soon there was conclusive news. Wuxia's body was not found in the mine. In other words, that fellow was definitely still alive, but no one knew where he was hiding. Combined with this person's ability to set up a teleportation array, he should have used the teleportation array to leave the mine after killing the cultivators from the Myriad Demon's Ridge. Moreover, the storage pouches of the dead cultivators were basically empty. This guy had killed so many people, and he even had the time to collect the spoils of war. This was simply unreasonable. The cultivators of the Myriad Demon's Ridge were furious. More and more cultivators from the Myriad Demon's Ridge moved toward the periphery of the Taimong Mountains. They swore to find Wuxia and kill him to avenge their fellow cultivators who had died. Although Wuxia had caused a lot of trouble in the past and had killed many cultivators from the Myriad Demon's Ridge, he had never killed so many people at once. It could be said that such an outrageous thing had never happened in the history of the 9 prefectures. In the past, the Myriad Demon's Ridge had targeted Wuxia more, because of their different standpoints and the temptation of the huge reward. However, it was different now. Many of their fellow cultivators, friends, and even family members had died at Wuxia's hands. Their conflict with Wuxia was not only because of their opposing camps, but also because of their own blood feud. It could be said that after the news of the battle in the mine spread, the cultivators of the Myriad Demon's Ridge became even more eager to kill Wuxia. They had never been so eager before. The cultivators of the Grand Heaven Alliance who heard the news naturally did not want to be left out. They also gathered in this area. They were not here to watch the show, but now that a large number of cultivators from the Myriad Demon's Ridge had gathered, it was the best time to secretly hunt. For a time, this large area was surging with wind and clouds. In the East 56th Heaven's secret city, there was a hubbub of voices as cultivators came and went. A group of 5 people entered the city and headed straight for the Heaven's Secret Commerce Alliance. The cultivation of these 5 people was not high. They were basically between the 3rd order and 5th order. In the Cloud River battlefield, such a team was very common. These 5 people were Ghost Shadow's team, and the leader was Senior Brother Qin. Junior Brother, it's all thanks to you that we were able to survive this time. Let's go. Senior Brother will treat you to some delicious food today. We won't go back until we're drunk. Senior Brother Qin patted Ghost Shadow's shoulder and laughed. Thinking back to 3 days ago, Senior Brother Qin and the others still had lingering fears. At that time, if Ghost Shadow had not dissuaded them, they would have definitely rushed into the mine with the other cultivators. Only death would have awaited them then. More than 2,000 cultivators had died without leaving a single one. Even a 9th order cultivator like Song Jue had died. How could they, a few 3rd order and 5th order cultivators, survive under such circumstances? When the news of what had happened in the mine spread, everyone felt as if they had just narrowly escaped death. Their gazes towards Ghost Shadow were filled with admiration. They did not stay there for too long. Previously, they had stayed there to wait for the results. Now that the results were out and it was a result that shook the entire 9 states, there was naturally no need to stay. The few of them rushed all the way here, preparing to rest and recuperate for a few days. Junior Brother, how is your perception of danger so sharp? Teach Senior Sister. Senior Sister who stood on the other side of Ghost Shadow and said with a smile. Ghost Shadow shook his head. It's not that I'm hiding it, but it seems to be my natural instinct. There's no way I can teach it. However, Senior Brother and Senior Sister, if you trust me, please remember one thing. Senior Brother Qin and Senior Sister whose expressions turned serious. Ghost Shadow said in a serious tone. Anything related to Wuxia is definitely not a good thing. In the future, wherever Wuxia appears, even if there are great benefits, you must avoid him. So strange. Senior sister, who raised her eyebrows slightly. Ghost Shadow sighed. I've been involved in matters related to him 3 times in a row, but every time, a large number of cultivators died tragically. Especially this time. While speaking, he could not help but shiver. Senior brother Qin nodded. We'll remember your words. In the future, wherever Luya appears, we'll take a detour. Isn't that simple? The few of them chatted and laughed as they entered a restaurant. The few of them were usually traveling outside, so they didn't have the chance to come to this kind of place to eat. But this time, no matter what, they had survived a great disaster, so it didn't matter if they indulged a little and relaxed their mood. In the same city, in a guest room on the 3rd floor of the Heavenly Secret Commerce Alliance, Lu Yi was lying on the ground with his arms and legs spread out, looking like he was better off dead. Hu Po was lying on the ground beside him. He looked up at him and reached his claws into the storage pouch hanging around his neck. He took out a Yao core and stuffed it into his mouth, crunching it. Yi sat not far from Lu Yi. She took out the items from the storage pouches one by one, and put them away by category. Seeing Lu Ye's lazy appearance, she said, If you're tired, then rest. I'm not tired. Lu Yi jumped up. He had never thought that having so many spoils of war could also be a kind of trouble. He had collected many storage pouches in the past, but none of them were as exaggerated as this time. There were 20 million devil-rich cultivators. On average, each of them had 2 or 3 storage pouches or more. Even if he had missed some during his search, the number of storage pouches he had collected this time was as high as 5,000. If these storage pouches all belonged to Spirit Stream tier cultivators, he would not have to worry. He could pack them all up and sell them to the Heavenly Secret Commerce Alliance. In any case, there were not many good things in the storage pouches of Spirit Stream tier cultivators. However, the owners of these storage pouches were all at the Cloud River tier, so he could not deal with them so casually. Who knew if there were any treasures inside? He could only open them one by one. Although Lu Ye's efficiency in opening restriction locks was very high, such a large number made him a little numb. 3 days ago, he left the bloody mine through the transportation formation he had left behind. After that, he did not delay and dragged his tired body all the way to this heavenly secret city. This was because he knew that the longer he delayed, the more disadvantageous it would be for him. The devil-rich cultivators who had died in the mine were definitely not all. There were definitely more people gathering in that direction. If he delayed for too long, he might fall into an encirclement again. If he did not have so many spoils of war, he could still hide outside with the concealment and aura-concealing spirit inscriptions. However, it was unrealistic to hide with so many spoils of war. To him, entering the Heavenly Secret Commerce Alliance to rest and reorganize was the safest and most reliable thing. His journey was safe and sound. After entering this place, he asked for a guest room and rested peacefully for a day. It was not until today that he had completely recovered. Under Yi's urging, he began to open the restriction locks. However, there were too many of them. Looking at the storage pouches piled up like a small mountain in front of him, Lu Yi was more willing to fight a battle of wits and courage with the devil-rich cultivators. However, this was still a large amount of wealth. Therefore, even if he was frustrated, he could only be patient and open the restriction locks one by one. Yi was in charge of checking the items in the storage pouches and then sorting out the useful items. Chapter 638. As the aftermath of the battle in the mine continued to ferment, a large number of cultivators entered the area to search for Lu Ye's whereabouts. Although more than 20 million devil-rich cultivators had died at his hands, including many 8th or 9th order masters, they were all killed by poison after all. It had nothing to do with Lu Ye's strength. As far as the myriad demon-rich cultivators knew, Lu Yi was only a 5th order Cloud River realm cultivator, so even if the result of the battle in the mine was shocking, it could not erase their enthusiasm and determination to find Lu Yi. Moreover, after such a battle, in the eyes of the myriad demon-rich cultivators, even if Lu Yi did not die, it was impossible for him to be safe and sound. Therefore, he could not have escaped far and was hiding nearby. As for the poison he had used, although it was frightening, It was something that could kill 2,000 people, so it must be extremely precious. Lu Yi might not have it in his hands. Even if he did, it did not matter too much. As long as he was not in a secluded environment like the mine, it would not be a big problem. It could be said that after the battle in the mine, the myriad demon-rich cultivators' targeting of Lu Yi not only did not lessen, but also intensified. On the second floor of a tea house facing the Heavenly Secret Commerce Union in the East 56th Heaven's Secret City, a cultivator was waiting quietly. A moment later, two figures quietly arrived and sat opposite him. The two who came later were a man and a woman. The man was handsome and the woman was beautiful. When they stood together, they could be said to be a perfect match. However, both of them had a burning flame mark on their foreheads. In the entire 9 provinces, only the cultivators of one great force had such an eye-catching mark. Sacred Flame Sect. Senior Brother Chu, Senior Sister Zhou. The cultivator who had been waiting here hurriedly stood up and saluted. Chu Yu nodded slightly and looked at the Heavenly Secret Commerce Union, asking, "Are you sure that is Lu Yi?" The cultivator said, "I didn't see his face. He was wearing an evil ghost mask, but judging from his figure, he was no different from Lu Yi. He was also carrying a huge bag." Zhou Pei's soft voice sounded. "Lu Yi had a small white beast with him. Did you see it?" "I haven't seen that before." This was also what he was puzzled about. Lu Yi always had a little white beast by his side, and it had almost become his signature. However, he didn't see any white beast that day, so he didn't dare to be too sure that the person he saw was Lu Yi. However, to be cautious, he still spread the news. Both of them were 9th Order Cloud River Realm Masters, which showed just how much importance Sacred Flame Sect attached to this matter. After all, Fire Prairie had died at the hands of Lu Yi. Furthermore, there was an irreconcilable enmity between the Sacred Flame Sect and the Jade Blood Sect. If there was a sect in the Myriad Devil Ridge that wanted to destroy the Jade Blood Sect the most, it would be the Sacred Flame Sect. Both of them had rushed over from their own sects in the 9 states. The Fire Prairie had been killed, and many of their disciples had died. The Sacred Flame Sect would definitely think of a way to take revenge. Therefore, after receiving the news, they came here immediately. However, they did not expect to receive such an answer. Chu Yun gazed in the direction of the Heavenly Secret Business Alliance. He tapped his finger on the table and said slowly, "Lu Yi escaped from the mine. He must not be in perfect condition. He must find a place to recover. The Heavenly Secret Business Alliance is a good choice." Zhou Pei said, "Senior brother, do you think that is Lu Yi?" "Most likely. But there is no trace of that little white beast." Some time ago, a new secret technique that can change the situation of the Beast Taming School appeared in the Heavenly Secret Treasury. There is also a new thing called the Spirit Beast Pouch. It seems to have come from a sealed world. The function of the Spirit Beast Pouch is to store monster beasts. This matter was not a secret. Nowadays, in the 9 regions, as long as the cultivators of the Beast Taming School had enough merit points, they would buy that secret method from the Tianji Treasury. However, so far no cultivator had been able to fully display that secret method. Zhou Pei suddenly understood, "Senior brother, do you think that Lu Yi has a Spirit Beast Pouch?" Although Spirit Beast Pouches are rare and expensive, with Lu Yi's status, he can still afford it. As for that huge bag, "Junior sister, don't forget that 2,000 cultivators died in the mine. Before Lu Yi left, he took all the storage pouches. Therefore, that bag contains a storage pouch." When Lu Yi walked into the Heavenly Secret Business Alliance, he had indeed attracted a lot of attention. After all cultivators were equipped with storage pouches. Very few people walked around with bags of various sizes, let alone carrying a huge bag. Therefore, even though he had only stayed on the first floor of the Heavenly Secret Business Alliance for a short time, he had attracted a lot of attention. In the beginning, no one thought too much about it. However, as time passed, some people gradually came to a realization. Currently, Zhou Yun and the others were not the only ones secretly watching the Heavenly Secret Business Alliance. Even on the second floor of the restaurant, there were several pairs of eyes secretly observing the Heavenly Secret Business Alliance. It was not that Lu Yi did not expect that he would be exposed because of that huge bag. However, he had no other choice at that time unless he was willing to give up on the spoils of war. If it were 1 or 200 storage pouches, he would have given them up. However, Wuxia could not bear to give up on a few thousand storage pouches. We can basically confirm that it is Wuxia, Chu Yun concluded. Fighting is not allowed in the Heavenly Secret Business Alliance. If he hides inside, we can't do anything to him. He will come out eventually. As Chu Yun spoke, he looked around and happened to see a familiar face looking in his direction. Their eyes met and they nodded to each other. Everything was understood without words. The current situation was that a large number of myriad Devil Ridge cultivators were searching for Wuxia's whereabouts. However, a small number of people had received some vague information and gathered at the Tianji city in the East 56. They were scattered all over the place, secretly watching the exit of the Tianji Business Alliance. As a result, the cultivators who stayed in the city vaguely sensed something strange. In recent days, the number of experts in the city seemed to have increased. In the guest room of the Heavenly Secret Business Alliance, Lu Yi and Lu Yi worked together. One of them opened the restriction locks on the storage pouches, while the other sorted out the contents of the storage pouches. There were more than 5,000 storage pouches. No matter how efficient Lu Yi was at opening the restriction locks, it would take at least 7 or 8 days to complete. This made the myriad Devil Ridge experts who were secretly watching from outside feel helpless. No one had seen with their own eyes whether Wuxia had entered the Heavenly Secret Business Alliance or not. It was just a suspicion. They had sent people into the Heavenly Secret Business Alliance to search, but they didn't find much. Now that days had passed and there was still no sign of Wuxia, many people began to have doubts. Could it be that Wuxia hadn't come here? If he hadn't come, it would be a waste of time to continue waiting here. Even if he had come, who knew when he would come out? The Tianji Business Alliance's lodging fee was not low, but Wuxia was a rich man after all. He could even afford to treat the Tianji pillar, and he had done it twice. To him, the lodging fee was nothing more than a drop in the ocean. If he had stayed in the Heavenly Secret Business Alliance for a year and a half, would they still have to wait for so long? For a time, many people were irritated, but there was nothing they could do. In the guest room, Lu Yi was still opening the restriction locks. After a lot of effort, the number of storage pouches piled up in front of him was finally reduced by half. However, he didn't find anything special. Most of the cultivator's storage pouches contained some spirit pills, spirit stones, spirit weapons, and spirit talismans. Most of them were some random materials such as collected ores, spirit flowers, and spirit herbs. Although the items were complicated, it was indeed a considerable fortune when all of them were gathered together. Lu Yi originally didn't have many spirit pills left, but now he had replenished them. It was worth mentioning that they had collected quite a few Yao cores from demonic beasts. These things were Hu Po's rations. Ever since he had eaten a Yao core, Hu Po had lost interest in spirit pills. After all, consuming a Yao core could help him grow faster. The only good news for Lu Yi was that even if he kept opening the restriction locks, it didn't affect his cultivation. The gluttonous meal continued to operate, and he threw a few spirit pills into his mouth from time to time. Although the spirit chi in the guest room was not as rich as in the spiritual land, it didn't affect his cultivation too much. A few days ago, he had contacted fourth senior brother, and learned that everything in Huitian Valley was stable. Giant armor had found the wolves and no one from the myriad Devil Ridge dared to disturb them. They were all cultivating in peace. This made Lu Yi feel a lot more at ease. Although he had said that when he left Huitian Valley, it was still unknown whether or not it could deter the cultivators of the Myriad Demon's Ridge. Especially after the battle in the mine, there might be people who were blinded by anger who would go to the spiritual land to cause trouble. But now it seemed that his words were still very deterrent. Before he died, the Myriad Devil Ridge cultivators would definitely not dare to have any ideas about returning to Huitian Valley's spiritual land. As for when he killed Song Jue, he said that he would return to the Spirit Stream battlefield and the Abyss Rainbow Hall's encampment. That was just a casual remark. Naturally, he wouldn't really do it. The main reason was that Song Jue's unyielding appearance was annoying. It was clearly the Myriad Devil Ridge who kept causing trouble. He had never taken the initiative to cause trouble, and only wanted to cultivate peacefully in the spiritual land. But in the end, it was as if he was some kind of evil person who wouldn't shrink from any crime. He had only said those words to frighten Song Jue before he died. That sentence was very effective. The unyielding Song Jue died with grievances because of him. This was probably what it meant to kill and destroy the heart. Luyi, Yi suddenly shouted, interrupting the messy thoughts in Lu Ye's mind. He looked up and saw that Yi was holding something in her hand. He said with some surprise, "Look at what this is." Lu Yi focused his vision and was stunned. A sound suddenly came from the storage bag in his hand that was opening the restriction lock. The entire storage bag exploded, turning into fragments all over the ground. He was careless and didn't control his strength well, triggering the restriction lock in the restriction lock. The storage bag exploded, and the things inside also turned to dust. Lu Yi didn't care, it was just a storage bag, nothing more. He excitedly took the item from Yi's hand and asked, "Where did you find this?" Chapter 639. What Lu Yi held in his hand was something that looked like a fruit core. Moreover, he also had one of these. Taking out his own fruit core and comparing it, there was almost no difference. It could be said that they were carved from the same mold. Breathfruit core. The breathfruit core was the core of the breathfruit, and the breathfruit was a spirit fruit that only grew in the chest sea. Its flesh had the effect of quickly restoring a cultivator's spirit energy, while its core had a myriad of strange uses. When Lu Yi was in the fifth order spirit stream realm, he took Wuxia with him to participate in the spirit stream battle. The two of them used their unique abilities to lead the guardian envoys of the various sects of Grand Heaven Alliance to turn the situation around. In the end, they occupied the central position of the chest sea, where there was an breathfruit tree with many breathfruits. Because Lu Yi and Wuxia played a crucial role in the entire spirit stream battle, one of the fruits was given to Lu Yi while the others were auctioned off. In the end, the breathfruit he obtained was given to Shui Yuan. The flesh of the breathfruit was refined into breathfruit wine by Shui Yuan, but it was all used up now. The breathfruit core became the key for him to enter the mirage to temper himself. However, not all breathfruit cores could allow cultivators to enter the mirage. After all, these things had very strange uses. Li Baxian once told him that a myriad demons mountain range sect once obtained an breathfruit core, and that breathfruit core's function was to greatly enhance the power of spirit arrays. Therefore, in the spirit stream battlefield, there was a myriad demons mountain range sect encampment that was impregnable. There were also some breathfruit cores that had no special uses, but could be sold to the Heaven's secret treasure house for at least 100,000 merit points. There were also some breathfruit cores that could improve a cultivator's perception and subtly change a cultivator's aptitude. Some breathfruit cores were even connected to rich spirit stone veins. In short, there was no fixed use for these things, and all kinds of strange uses could appear. When Lu Yi first heard of these things, he only felt that the breathfruit core was very magical and didn't think too much about it. However, as his cultivation and experience gradually increased, he slowly became aware of some things. The breathfruit cores had all kinds of strange uses, and most likely, they were not their own, but were given to them by the heavens. For example, the breathfruit core that Lu Yi had was just a key. Every time he used it, he would enter the mirage, which allowed him to temper himself without restraint. On the one hand, Lu Ye's saber skills were obtained from life and death battles with the cultivators of the Myriad Devil Ridge. On the other hand, he had also obtained them from training in the mirages. Every time he trained, he would end up dying. The experiences he had memorized with his own life and body were undoubtedly extremely precious. Lu Yi was. There was no need to delve into this. What Lu Yi was curious about was the use of this breathfruit core that he had inadvertently obtained. Thinking so, Lu Yi picked up the breathfruit core and poured his spirit power into it, ready to investigate it. No matter what it was used for, since it was carried around by someone, it certainly wasn't something useless. He immersed his mind and his vision blurred. When Lu Yi recovered, he had appeared in a small enclosed space. There was nothing around him except for a door in front of him. There was a line of large words on it that read, "To enter the Mirage Realm, you need to spend 100 merit points." Lu Yi frowned. Did he take the wrong one? This was clearly the effect of his breathfruit core. He didn't push open the door because once he did, he wouldn't be able to come out unless he was killed. Opening his eyes, he picked up another breath fruit core and poured his spirit power into it. Just like before, in the next moment, he appeared in a small enclosed space. There was nothing but a door with a line of large words on it that read, "To enter the Mirage Realm, you need to spend 100 merit points." Lu Yi was stunned and stared at the door. He was sure that he didn't take the wrong one just now, but the two breath fruit cores had the same effect, which was to enter the Mirage Realm. This made Lu Yi a little dumbfounded. He thought he got a good thing, but who knew it was the same as what he had? This made some unpleasant memories emerge in his heart. When he was still in the spirit stream realm, he once entered this small space and met a cultivator from the Myriad Devil Ridge here. As a result, that guy killed him several times. Since then, Lu Yi was very vigilant every time he urged the breath fruit core to enter here, for fear of encountering that person again. At that time, he speculated that the other party should also have a breath fruit core with the same effect as the one in his hand, but at that time, he hadn't been blessed by Tianji. The other party was wrapped in thick fog, and he couldn't see the other party's appearance. He could only be sure that the person was from the Myriad Devil Ridge, and his cultivation was much higher than his. The reason they could meet in this small space was obviously because they both urged the breath fruit core at the same time. The probability was very small, so Lu Yi had only met the other party once so far. After being killed a few times, Lu Yi swore to himself that one day, he would take his revenge. So the original owner of the breath fruit core he got this time was the Myriad Devil Ridge cultivator he met here? So it was too much of a coincidence. However, Lu Yi wasn't surprised that this kind of thing happened to him. After all, he was also a person who was blessed by Tianji and had great luck. Although sometimes he was quite unlucky, overall his luck wasn't bad. The only pity was that Lu Yi didn't know who the original owner of this breath fruit core was. So even if he inadvertently took revenge, it didn't raise his interest. The other party had the breath fruit core, so he obviously had an extraordinary background. After all, he was a cultivator from a big sect. And judging from the traces of the other party killing him last time, that guy was a weapon cultivator. So the original owner of the breath fruit core should be a powerful weapon cultivator. Definitely an 8th order or even 9th order. Lu Yi immediately remembered that he did kill a 9th order weapon cultivator in the mine. Under normal circumstances, he was probably not the other party's opponent, but at that time that person was corroded by a strong poison, so the strength he could exert was greatly reduced. Even so, it took Lu Yi a full 10 breaths to finish him off. Because that person's combat skills were very good, obviously tempered thousands of times. It was a match. The original owner of the breath fruit core should be the 9th order weapon cultivator who died at his hands. The other party often honed his battle skills in the Mirage, so his performance before his death was better than any other 9th order weapon cultivator, and his battle skills were much better. However, no matter how many skills you had, you couldn't beat a poison bead. Lu Yi also didn't expect that the enmity he had formed in this small space would be resolved in such a way. But I have 2 breath fruit cores with the same effect. And I can give one to 4th senior brother when I have the chance later. It's still very useful to hone in the Mirage, and I don't have to worry about dying. At most, I'll feel some pain at the moment of death. Withdrawing his mind from the small space, Lu Yi put the 2 breath fruit cores into the storage space on the back of his hand and continued to work hard with the Yi. Days passed and finally, at a certain moment, the seal on the last storage bag in Lu Ye's hand was cracked. After tossing the storage pouch to Yi, Lu Yi stood up and stretched his back. He was finally free. After a while, Yi pushed nearly 100 storage bags in front of Lu Yi. Almost every one of these storage bags was full. The nearly 100 storage bags were divided into 3 parts by Yi. She pointed to one of them and said, "These are all spirit pills, spirit stones, and monster cores of monster beasts that you can use." She then pointed to the pile in the middle and said, "These can be brought back to the sect." There were some things that Lu Yi couldn't use, but the junior brothers and sisters in the sect could use them. They were all placed in these storage bags. When they were brought back to the sect, they could be put into the sect's treasure vault for future use. She then pointed to the last pile. "These are not very useful. You can sell them to the Tianji Business Alliance or the Tianji Treasure Vault." With Yi, a little expert in overall planning, there were many things that Lu Yi didn't have to worry about. This undoubtedly saved him a lot of time. Lu Yi nodded and sat down again. He poured out the things in the first 2 piles of storage bags one by one and put them into his storage space. His storage space was formed by Madame Yun's void tattoo, so the internal space was very large. Even so, after storing all the needed treasures, there wasn't much space left in the entire space. It had to be said that the number of spoils obtained this time was too astonishing. After all, it was the net worth of more than 20 million devil-rich cultivators. Help me call a steward up. Lu Yi looked at the storage bags on the ground that hadn't been dealt with and ordered. It was not convenient for him to show himself, so he didn't have to worry about this if he let Yi do it. Yi responded and pushed the door open and walked out. Not long after, Yi let a business alliance steward in. At a glance, he saw the storage bags stacked like a small mountain in the room. The middle-aged steward, who had seen a lot of things, couldn't help but twitch his eyes. Basically, it was normal for a cultivator to have 2 or 3 storage bags. 4 or 5 storage bags were considered too many. If there were more, they would be the spoils of war obtained from killing people. There were only a few people who could bring dozens of storage bags to the Tianji Business Alliance in a year. But how many storage bags were stacked in front of him? The middle-aged steward's eyes were sharp. With just a glance, he estimated that the number of storage bags here was probably more than 4,000 or 5,000. What he saw was not storage bags stacked like a mountain but dead lives. He originally thought that it was just an ordinary transaction, but in the end, he found that the scene was beyond his imagination. Chapter 640. The transaction went smoothly. The steward didn't ask for Lu Ye's name at all. This was because the steward already knew Lu Ye's identity when he saw the thousands of storage pouches. In the battle in the mine, 20 million devil-rich cultivators were poisoned to death. This matter caused a huge uproar. How could the Tianji Business Alliance not know about it? They knew even more than the average cultivator. After all, the Tianji Business Alliance did all kinds of business, including intelligence. At present, other than Lu Yi, who could take out so many storage pouches at once? Who else in the entire Cloudy River battlefield could do so? Empty storage pouches weren't worth much, but there were so many of them. In addition, there were all kinds of things that Lu Yi wanted to sell. Overall, this was a rare big deal. Therefore, the steward calculated the price carefully. It took half a day to settle the transaction. After walking out of Lu Ye's room, the steward suddenly turned around. He looked at Lu Yi with a hesitant expression and said meaningfully, "Recently, the business alliance has been quite lively. I hope we won't disturb your rest." After he finished speaking, he cupped his fists and turned to leave. Lu Yi closed the door and walked to the window. He hid his body and quietly looked outside. He didn't understand. "What's wrong? I'm afraid our location has been exposed." He was shocked. "How could that be? That's normal. Back then I was carrying such a big bag. Quite a number of people must have seen me. As a cultivator, carrying such a big bag is a very suspicious thing. It is inevitable that some people would notice it." This was within Lu Ye's expectations. However, he really had no choice at that time. Unless he was willing to give up all his spoils of war, there was no way he could hide in the wilderness with so many spoils of war. However, those people didn't see my face. Moreover, I put the amber in the spirit beast's pouch. Therefore, although some people suspect that I'm hiding here, they don't have any concrete evidence. He suddenly remembered what the steward said before he left. She didn't think much of it at that time. Now she suddenly realized. "That steward was reminding you?" Lu Yi nodded. He was puzzled. "But isn't the Tianji Business Alliance neutral? Doesn't it never participate in the conflict between the two factions? Why would he suddenly do you a favor?" "Not necessarily." Lu Yi walked away from the window and sat down. She poured herself a cup of tea and took a sip. "Maybe they're afraid that I'll misunderstand and think that they were the ones who leaked the news of me being here." That was why the steward looked so hesitant before he left. This was because the Heavenly Secret Business Alliance had never participated in the games and confrontations between the two factions. Logically speaking, there was no need for them to provide any information to Lu Yi. However, if he didn't warn Lu Yi, He would be surrounded and attacked the moment he walked out of the Tianji Business Alliance. There would be unnecessary misunderstandings, thinking that the Tianji Business Alliance had leaked the information. If Lu Yi held a grudge against the Tianji Business Alliance because of this, it would go against the original intention of the business alliance. The steward's expression was hesitant, and his words were unclear, but the hint was obvious enough. How could Lu Yi not understand? Besides, even if the steward didn't say anything, Lu Yi might have found out. In the past few days he had been busy opening the restriction lock on the storage bag, and didn't pay attention to the situation outside. However, if he had the time to observe the surroundings, he would definitely be able to see some clues. The steward's hint was just to push the boat along with the current. It was dispensable. Then what should we do now? He asked. Leave them hanging. What else can we do? No matter how much those people from Myriad Demon Ridge wanted to kill him, they couldn't rush into the Tianji Business Alliance and cause trouble. All fighting was prohibited in the Business Alliance. Although Lu Yi knew that even if he rushed out, those cultivators from Myriad Demon Ridge might not be able to do anything to him. He had been running around since leaving Returning Heaven Valley. He was really tired from the battle of wits and courage with Myriad Demon Ridge, so he could rest here for a while. He raised his hand and tapped on the battlefield mark to check his information. Namely, identity, disciple of Jade Blood Sect. Cultivation, 5th Order Cloud River Realm. Location, Cloud River Battlefield. Merit, 176,520 points. Battle merit, 56 points. When he left Returning Heaven Valley, he only had a little more than 70,000 points, but now it was more than 170,000 points. Naturally, this was the harvest in the mine. For most cultivators, tens of thousands of merit points were not a small number, but for Lu Yi, merit points were just numbers. In the short term, merit points didn't have much use other than allowing him to buy some strange flames from the Tianji treasure house or to use the Tianji pillar in a crisis. However, as far as he knew, merit points were of great use after one reached the True Lake realm. It could be said that merit points ran through a cultivator's life in the 9 continents. No matter how high one's cultivation was, merit points were always indispensable. Especially after reaching the True Lake realm, the demand for merit points would become huge. Lu Yi didn't inquire about the specific situation in detail. He only chatted with Shui Yuan about it when he was at the Blue Blood Sect's main sect. Because of the high demand for merit points, the heritage of a sect wasn't supported by just a few masters. The quality of the disciples was also particularly important. The reason why Shui Yuan spent so many years at the True Lake realm and only reached the Divine Sea realm last year was because the Blue Blood Sect was too poor. She didn't have enough merit points to improve her cultivation. Otherwise, with her aptitude, she would have reached the Divine Sea realm long ago. The senior brothers and senior sisters of the previous generation in the Blue Blood Sect were the best in the 9 continents in terms of aptitude. Needless to say, the deceased eldest senior brother, Feng Wujiang, was a character who led a huge camp and almost trampled the enemy. Even though he had been dead for more than 30 years, there were still various legends about him in the 9 continents. Shui Yuan, Shaoxing, He, Li Baxian, all of them were extremely talented, especially Li Baxian. If it weren't for his spirit aperture being destroyed and him wasting more than 10 years in the spirit stream battlefield, he was probably not far from the Divine Sea realm. For the time being, he didn't plan to leave the Heavenly Secret Commerce Alliance. He had plenty of resources on hand so he could cultivate in peace. This made the Myriad Demon's rich cultivators who were secretly paying attention to his movements feel uncomfortable. Although the Myriad Demon Ridge cultivators who had gathered here after receiving the news had deduced that Lu Yi had entered the Heavenly Secret Commerce Alliance through various traces, none of them had seen him with their own eyes. No one knew if he was really here or not. They could only wait outside and wait for Lu Yi to show himself, provided that Lu Yi was really inside. But after 7 or 8 days, there was still no sign of Lu Yi. Some Myriad Demons rich cultivators couldn't sit still. From their point of view, even if Lu Yi was in the Heavenly Secret Commerce Alliance, he wouldn't show himself for a while. The outside world was very dangerous, so hiding in the Heavenly Secret Commerce Alliance was very safe. Moreover, Lu Yi was a dog with countless merit points. In addition, he had seized the storage bags of more than 2,000 cultivators, so he definitely didn't lack cultivation materials. No one would be surprised if he stayed inside for a year or two. Lu Yi could stay inside for a year or two, but could they wait outside for a year or two? It was obviously impossible. Without knowing if Lu Yi was hiding here or when he would come out, many of the myriad demon-rich cultivators gradually lost their patience and left. However, there were also some people who continued to wait. For example, Chu Yun and Zhou Pei of the Sacred Flame sect. Patience was not something they lacked. As long as they could kill Lu Yi, not to mention 1 or 2 years, they could even wait 8 or 10 years. Several days passed in a flash. Lu Ye's days were very leisurely. Every day he swallowed spirit pills, cultivated, and read books. Although the efficiency wasn't as good as in Return to Heaven Valley, the difference wasn't too big. After all, he didn't have high requirements for a cultivation environment. Moreover, the heaven and earth spirit chi in this room was equivalent to that of a B-grade spirit land. However, the cost of the accommodation per night was a little high. Ordinary people really couldn't afford to live here. Only rich people like Lu Yi didn't care at all. His thinking was very simple. No matter how many resources there were, they were still external objects. Only when these external objects were converted into one's own strength and time could they be used to their full potential. Most of the time, Yi was silently cultivating on the side. She and Hu Po were companions. No matter who cultivated, it would increase their strength. This was an advantage that no cultivator or monster beast in the 9 provinces could compare to. This was also the reason why Yi and Hu Po's strength could catch up to Lu Ye's. In the past, Lu Ye's cultivation had always been higher than Yi and Hu Po's, but now they were equal. The biggest credit was that Overlord-level Monster General's Monster Core. However, there were also times when Yi would go out and buy some delicious food for Lu Yi, or go out to scout for information. The world only knew that Lu Yi had Hu Po by his side, but they never knew that he had Yi by his side. This greatly facilitated Yi's movements. The door was pushed open and Yi walked in excitedly. Lu Yi, there's a spirit stick auction in the Merchant Union tonight. Oh. Lu Yi revealed an interested expression. He had been in the Cloud River battlefield for half a year. Through various channels he had obtained many spirit sticks. However, he had only encountered a spirit stick auction once. This was also the only way to use merits to obtain a spirit stick. As for merits, Lu Yi had never lacked them. The last time he participated in the spirit stick auction, he had practically bought all the spirit sticks. What kind of spirit sticks are there? I heard there's a purple spirit stick. Yi put down the food box in her hand. Hu Po's head came over and sniffed. It was cooked. He immediately lost interest. Do you want to participate? Let's go take a look. He could also see if the Tianji treasury had any earthen core fire for sale. In the battle in the mine, although he had killed 2,000 enemies, he should have used up a lot of fuel for his innate skill tree. Although he had some spare earthen core fire, he needed to use it in an emergency, so Lu Yi didn't plan to use it. Now that he had enough merits, he could go to the Tianji treasury to get some goods. Chapter 641. As night fell, Lu Yi wore his mask and walked out of the guest room. He went to the first floor and headed straight for the Tianji Hall where the Tianji pillars were. Every Tianji business alliance had its own Tianji pillars. These Tianji pillars were used for positioning. Cultivators could use these Tianji pillars to travel to and from the Cloudy River battlefield. When cultivators from the 9 states entered the Cloudy River battlefield, they could choose these Tianji pillars and enter the Tianji Business Alliance. Cultivators from the Cloudy River battlefield could use these Tianji pillars to leave and return to the 9 states. Hence, the Tianji Business Alliance in the Cloudy River battlefield was bustling with activity at all times. The Tianji pillars had 4 sides, which corresponded to 4 directions. One of the directions was distorted from time to time. Every time this happened, cultivators from all over the 9 states would appear out of thin air. In the other direction there was a line that was not too long. These were cultivators who wanted to leave the Cloudy River battlefield. They came to the Tianji pillar and pressed their hands on it, instantly disappearing. There were not many people in this line. After all, the process of leaving the Cloudy River battlefield was not complicated. Could even be said that it was very fast. Most of the time this direction was empty. There was no need to line up. The remaining 2 directions had more people lined up. They were all here to borrow the Tianji pillars and enter the Tianji treasure house to do business. After Lu Yi arrived, he found a place to stand and waited slowly. There were not many people in front of him, only a dozen. Furthermore, the cultivators who came here had basically confirmed what they wanted to buy or sell. Hence, the efficiency was very high. It was very rare for a cultivator to occupy a spot for a long time. The cultivators in front of him kept leaving. Lu Yi followed the flow of people and walked forward slowly. Suddenly, a figure came to his side and stared at him. Lu Yi turned and saw a young male cultivator. There was a look of scrutiny in his eyes. He slowly said, "Fellow cultivator, I think you look like someone." Lu Ye's voice was hoarse. "Like who?" Although he did not learn how to change his voice, as a Cloudy River tier cultivator, he could still use this little trick casually. "Fellow cultivator, why ask when you already know the answer?" The young man shook his head. "If you don't mind, I mind." The young man was instantly speechless. In the end, he could only shake his head. "You can't avoid it unless you leave the Cloudy River battlefield." After saying this, the young man directly left. Even though he felt that the cultivator wearing the mask was Lu Yi, he didn't dare to do anything in the Tianji Business Union. He could only give him a warning. Hurriedly urging his spirit chi, Lu Yi condensed a series of spirit inscriptions in front of him, wrapping himself up with almost no gaps. At the same time, his figure flickered as he rushed straight towards the crowd. He didn't need to fight with the 3 Ninth Order cultivators. No matter what, this was the Heavenly Secret Business Alliance. He only needed to delay for a moment, and the masters of the Heavenly Secret Business Alliance would act. But whether it was him or the 3 Ninth Order cultivators who attacked, they had seriously underestimated the reaction speed of the Heavenly Secret Business Alliance. In other words, when Lu Yi left his room and arrived on the first floor, the Heavenly Secret Business Alliance had already been paying close attention to him. Audacious! An angry roar rang out as another cultivator rushed out from somewhere in the crowd. When this cultivator rushed out, the spirit chi fluctuations on his body were that of a 9th Order Cloud River Realm cultivator. But in the blink of an eye, his aura had broken through the limit of the Cloud River Realm, reaching an unfathomable level. True Lake Realm. Someone exclaimed in shock, and even more people's eyes trembled. Turned out the rumors were true. The people of the Heavenly Secret Business Alliance had a way to break through the shackles of the Heavenly Secret in a short time in the Cloud River battlefield, reaching a height that ordinary cultivators couldn't reach. Many people had heard of this rumor, but no one knew whether it was true or not, because no one had ever verified it. Until now, when they saw it with their own eyes. The Heavenly Secret Business Alliance was a very thought-provoking organization, which could be seen from its name alone. In the cultivation world of the 9 provinces, anything related to the word, Heavenly Secret, couldn't be taken lightly. For a long time, the cultivators of the 9 provinces suspected that the Heavenly Secret Business Alliance had some special relationship with the high and unfathomable Heavenly Secret. This was because the goods of the Heavenly Secret Business Alliance could often be exchanged with the goods of the Heavenly Secret Treasury. There was once someone who sold something to the Heavenly Secret Business Alliance, but in the end, they found the thing that had been sold in the Heavenly Secret Treasury. Moreover, the Heavenly Secret Business Alliance had never participated in the conflict between the 2 factions, giving the world the impression that it was a neutral organization that did business. But no one had ever underestimated it, and no one knew how strong the heritage of the Heavenly Secret Business Alliance was. The aura of the True Lake Realm continued to rise until it reached a peak, and all the cultivators in the Heavenly Secret Hall felt their bodies grow heavy under the terrifying pressure, and their breathing became difficult. It was as if someone had cast a spell on them, and the 3 Ninth Order Cloud River Realm cultivators who launched the surprise attack, Lu Yi who was fleeing, and the many cultivators who were in chaos all froze in place. Immediately after, there was a popping sound and a strong smell of blood spread out, and vitality quickly withered. As if it was just an illusion, the pressure that made it difficult to move suddenly disappeared, and when the cultivators looked around, they all felt their hair stand on end. This was because there were 3 more corpses in the Heavenly Secret Hall, And they were the three Ninth-Order Cloud River Realm cultivators who launched the surprise attack on Lu Yi. No one knew how they died, and when they came back to their senses they were already dead. In front of the three corpses, the middle-aged cultivator stood quietly, and his expression was dignified. The aura on his body was still that of a Ninth-Order Cloud River Realm cultivator. But at this moment, who would think that he was just a Ninth-Order Cloud River Realm cultivator? This person was clearly a true Lake Realm cultivator, and not just any true Lake Realm cultivator, but one who had reached the peak of the true Lake Realm. In the Spirit Stream battlefield, cultivators above the Spirit Stream realm could still force their way in by spending merit points. But in the Cloud River battlefield it was impossible. Only Cloud River realm cultivators could enter the Cloud River battlefield. This was a rule set by the Heavenly Secret Hall, and no one could break it. But now it seemed that this was not the case. At the very least, the people of the Heavenly Secret Merchant Union could break this rule, and they could even break through the restrictions on cultivation in the Cloud River battlefield in a short time. But this was not the only thing that shocked everyone. More importantly, the three Ninth-Order Cloud River Realm cultivators had been killed like 3 ants, and no one had seen them clearly. They had been killed by the Heavenly Secret Merchant Union, who had always been neutral. Under everyone's gaze, the middle-aged cultivator slowly said, Duan Hua and Xue Feiyan of the Heartless Pavilion, and Luo Huayan of the Divine Will sect, these 3 people attacked people in the Merchant Union, breaking the rules of our Merchant Union. They were killed on the spot as a warning to others. In addition, the Merchant Union will not make any transactions with cultivators from the Heartless Pavilion and Divine Will sect for the next 3 years. As soon as he said this, many cultivators went into an uproar. 3 Ninth-Order Cloud River Realm cultivators were killed, and it was normal for cultivators to die. Not long ago, 20 million Devil Ridge cultivators had died in a mine. But what shocked many cultivators was that this person from the Heavenly Secret Merchant Union was actually able to identify the sect that the 3 cultivators came from, and even their names. This was not just a matter of intelligence but also a matter of precaution. Perhaps when the 3 cultivators were about to attack, the people from the Heavenly Secret Merchant Union had already noticed and were waiting for them to strike. Otherwise, even if the 3 cultivators were able to display their true strength, they would not have reacted so quickly. The attitude of the Heavenly Secret Merchant Union this time was undoubtedly very decisive, and they did not show any mercy. For the next 3 years, the Heavenly Secret Merchant Union would not make any transactions with cultivators from the 2 sects. Compared to the death of the 3 Ninth-Order Cloud River Realm cultivators, this decision was undoubtedly a greater loss to the 2 sects. Chapter 642. From the moment a cultivator stepped onto the path of cultivation, it was inevitable that they would have to deal with the Heavenly Secret Business Alliance. Take Lu Yi for example. Not long after he entered the Spirit Stream battlefield, he began to buy and sell things in the Heavenly Secret Business Alliance. Although he could also trade with other cultivators, it was not as convenient and practical as doing business in the Heavenly Secret Business Alliance. If he couldn't do business with the Heavenly Secret Business Alliance, many things would become complicated. The lower the cultivation of a cultivator, the more dependent they would be on the Heavenly Secret Business Alliance. The Business Alliance's decision brought a lot of trouble to the 2 sects from the Myriad Devil Ridge. It had been many years since anyone had caused trouble in the Heavenly Secret Business Alliance. To the current generation of cultivators, the Heavenly Secret Business Alliance was just a place to buy and sell things. Only now did the cultivators realize that to a certain extent, the Heavenly Secret Business Alliance was a colossus that was not inferior to the Grand Heaven Alliance or the Myriad Devil Ridge. Normally, this colossus would maintain a neutral stance and not interfere with the competition between the 2 factions. However, if its rules were broken in its territory, it would also bear its fangs. Moreover, compared to the Grand Heaven Alliance and the Myriad Devil Ridge, this colossus had its own unique advantages. All kinds of rumors floated into the cultivators' minds. Everyone realized that the interesting rumors they heard in the past were not just rumors. They were all things that had happened in the past. For example, this time perhaps in a few decades, the next generation of cultivators would only think of today's incident as a rumor. However, The cultivators who had witnessed it with their own eyes knew that it was not just a rumor. Lu Yi was surprised by the Heavenly Secret Business Alliance's decisiveness and viciousness in dealing with this matter. He had only wanted to stall for time and wait for the Heavenly Secret Business Alliance's experts to appear so that he could be safe. However, on second thought, perhaps the Heavenly Secret Business Alliance felt that this was a good opportunity to establish their power. Since they wanted to establish their power, the more ruthless they acted, the more effective the results would be. He believed that after today, no one would dare to cause trouble in the Heavenly Secret Business Alliance for a long time to come. As for revenge, as long as the cultivators from the 2 myriad devil rich sects were sane, they would not think of taking revenge on the Heavenly Secret Business Alliance. After a short while, the attendants of the Tianji Business Alliance arrived and dragged the 3 corpses away. They quickly cleaned up the bloodstains on the ground and cleaned up the Tianji Palace as if nothing had happened. Only the smell of blood lingering at the tip of everyone's nose reminded them that everything just now was not an illusion. The middle-aged cultivator said, "It's just a small matter. I hope I didn't disturb you." He was an elite at the peak stage of the true lake tier. Regardless of whether it was his cultivation level or his age, he was not wrong to call a group of Cloud River tier cultivators little friends. He strode away, glancing over at Lu Yi before he left, whether intentionally or unintentionally. After a moment of silence, the Heavenly Secret Hall became lively again. Lu Yi suddenly recalled the time when Dong Shai had chased after him in the Spirit Stream battlefield. Back then, there had been a significant gap between his cultivation base and Dong Shai's, and he'd had no choice but to flee to the Heavenly Secret Commerce Alliance. At the time, the Heavenly Secret Commerce Alliance had sent an elderly man to intervene. The cultivation he displayed was only at the 9th Order Spirit Stream realm, but in the periphery of the Spirit Stream battlefield, a 9th Order cultivator was undoubtedly a very powerful existence. But now that he thought about it, was that old man really only at the 9th Order? Who knew if that old man was a Cloud River tier or even a true lake tier cultivator in disguise? He secretly warned himself that he would have to be more careful when dealing with people from the Heavenly Secret Commerce Alliance in the future. These people were protected by Heavenly Secret, and under certain circumstances the strength they displayed might just be a facade. Throwing away the distracting thoughts in his mind, Lu Yi raised his hand and pressed it on the Heavenly Secret pillar. He immersed his mind and connected to the Heavenly Secret Treasury. His luck was not bad. The Earth Core Fire that had been sold out before actually appeared in a dozen this time. 1 Earth Core Fire cost 200 merit points. In the early days, this price was not cheap for Lu Yi. After all, merit points were hard to come by. But now the price was simply too good. If not for the fact that there was no stock in the Heavenly Secret Treasury, Lu Yi would have bought as many as there were. The talent tree's demand for rare flames like the Earth Core Fire was too great. Lu Yi sometimes wondered what it would be like if he ignited all the leaves on the talent tree. But in the end, this was only a thought. So far, although he had ignited many leaves, compared to the entire talent tree, it was not even half. But one day, he believed that he would be able to ignite the entire talent tree. After buying the Earth Core Fire, Lu Yi looked for other things that were suitable for the talent tree to devour and were not too expensive. For example, pill flames and the like. In the end, he spent more than 10,000 merit points. The Spirit Lot auction was about to begin. Just like last time, Lu Yi received an item from the Heavenly Secret Merchant Union to participate in the Spirit Lot auction. It was an item that looked like a jade finger. As long as one was in the Heavenly Secret Merchant Union, their mind could enter a special space and participate in the Spirit Lot auction. After half a cup of tea's time, the cultivators participating in the Spirit Lot auction in various locations of the Heavenly Secret Merchant Union opened their eyes one after another with ugly expressions. This was not the first time many people participated in the Spirit Lot auction, so they had a rough estimate of the price of the various colors of the Spirit Lot. Generally, the price fluctuated around 10%, which was not worth it. After all, everyone's merit points did not come from the wind. They were earned through life and death battles with their enemies. It could be said that every merit point was a struggle of blood and sweat. Except for people like Lu Yi who spent merit points like water, every cultivator was very careful with their merit points. But this time spirit lot auction was not going in the right direction from the beginning. No one knew which bastard had directly raised the price to a level that made it difficult for everyone to participate. As a result, the shortest spirit lot auction in history was born. From the beginning to the end, it took less than half a cup of tea's time. At this moment, Lu Yi had returned the jade finger-like item and returned to his room. With Lu Ye's current status, competing with a group of Cloud River cultivators for spirit lots was no challenge at all. All the spirit lots, from white to purple, were obtained by him alone. Unfortunately, there were not many spirit lots this time. There was only one purple spirit lot, 2 blue spirit lots, 4 green spirit lots and 9 white spirit lots. It was better than nothing. He had broken through to the 5th order in Fox Immortal Valley. Since then, he had been busy fighting a battle of wits and courage with the cultivators of Myriad Demon Ridge. Although he had cultivated during this period overall, his cultivation had not improved by much. The spirit lots he had now were not enough for him to break through to the 6th order, but they could save him some time. As early as when Lu Yi had just entered the Cloud River battlefield, he had learned that the Cloud River realm was the fastest realm for cultivators to improve their cultivation. It turned out that this was indeed the case. As long as a cultivator had enough spirit lots, it would not take long to cross the entire Cloud River realm. Thinking back to when he was in the Spirit Stream battlefield, each small realm breakthrough took 1 or 2 months at the fastest and 2 or 3 months at the slowest. Especially from the 8th order to the 9th order, it took him a full 4 months. Although it was delayed by various unexpected events, even if there were no delays, the cultivation speed would not be too fast. After all, the spirit apertures had to be opened one after another. But it had only been half a year since he set foot on the Cloud River battlefield, and he had already reached the 5th order Cloud River realm. Ghost Shadow's cultivation speed was fast enough. He had come to the Cloud River battlefield a few months earlier than Lu Yi, but he was only in the 3rd order. In comparison, Lu Ye's cultivation speed could be said to be terrifying. Of course, he had experienced many hardships during this period. It could only be said that the greater the effort, the greater the reward. Returning to the guest room, Hu Po was sleeping soundly while Yi was cultivating. Lu Yi did not disturb her. Walking to the side and sitting down, Lu Yi took out the earth core fire and alchemy fire he had bought this time and urged the talent tree to devour them. At the same time, he paid close attention to the reaction of the talent tree. After such a long time, Lu Yi had more or less concluded some patterns. In the process of devouring the strange flames, if only one leaf on the talent tree lit up, there was basically no need to have too much hope. The things on the leaf were most likely some techniques to construct spirit runes. Of course, there were exceptions. For example, spirit runes like sharpness and defense were all carried by individual leaves. If many leaves lit up at the same time, it would definitely be an incredible spirit rune. For example, the Fire Phoenix, Flight Wings, Sky Restriction, and even the Charm Divine rune were all carried by more than one leaf. Because the construction of these spirit runes was extremely complicated, a single leaf would not be able to carry them. More leaves would need to be combined. Moreover, some spirit runes could only be activated by devouring special flames. Back then, when he urged the talent tree to devour the Phoenix True Fire, there was an additional Fire Phoenix spirit rune on the talent tree. After killing the Fox Demon and devouring its alchemy fire, the Charm Divine rune was activated. However, even if most of the leaves on the talent tree did not carry complete spirit runes, the many techniques to construct spirit runes were still of great help to Lu Yi. Now, his attainments in the Tao of spirit runes were far superior to cultivators of the same level. For him to be valued and taught by Madame Yun, these techniques from the talent tree were indispensable. It could even be said that when he was setting up arrays, he would use such techniques every time. The Earth Core Fire and Alchemy Fire that he had bought with more than 10,000 merit points were quickly devoured. A few leaves on the talent tree burned fiercely. Lu Yi checked them one by one and found that he did not obtain any new spirit runes. He was not too disappointed. After all, the number of spirit runes he had grasped now was enough for him to deal with most situations. The only thing that made him a little uneasy was the Void Spirit rune. He was sure that there was a Void Spirit rune on the talent tree, but he did not know where it was and could not activate it. The more he came into contact with the Void Spirit Rune, the more he felt that this spirit rune had many wonderful uses. It was a pity that the talent tree had not been activated, so he could not put many ideas into practice. Just based on his efficiency and speed in constructing Void Spirit runes, he could not verify those wonderful ideas. To be continued. Chapter 643. After checking the talent tree, Lu Yi woke Yi up and took out the many spirit sticks that he had just bought. As time passed, the spirit sticks were crushed one after another. Rich and pure spirit chi gushed out, and the man and the spirit eagerly devoured and cultivated. A day later, all the spirit sticks were used up. Lu Yi silently sensed his own body. His cultivation level had not improved by much. After all, the total duration of those spirit sticks could not compare to a single golden spirit stick. At his level of cultivation, 1 or 2 golden spirit sticks could no longer break through. However, cultivation was like this. Bit by bit accumulation, quantitative change would lead to qualitative change. Without the spirit sticks, Lu Yi swallowed spirit pills and continued to cultivate. He showed his face in the Heavenly Secret Commerce Alliance and caused a storm. Although he wore a mask the entire time and didn't reveal his true appearance, the cultivators of the Myriad Devil Ridge who were certain that he was hiding in the Heavenly Secret Commerce Alliance were able to make some deductions from some clues. Now, there were definitely many Myriad Demon Ridge experts waiting outside the Heavenly Secret Business Alliance. Lu Yi had no intention of leaving this place in a short time. In a flash, another few days passed. Cultivating for a long time was a little boring, especially since Lu Ye's cultivation method was different from others. When other cultivators inhaled and exhaled the spirit chi of heaven and earth, they had to immerse themselves and concentrate. During the process of cultivation, it was difficult to notice the passage of time. Perhaps a few days had passed during a cultivation session. This was also the reason why cultivators with higher cultivation levels often went into seclusion for a year and a half or even longer. They could not detect the passage of time. Lu Yi was different. His cultivation mainly relied on swallowing spirit pills, and did not delay him from doing other things. Therefore, it was easy for him to feel bored after a long time. Usually, when encountering such a situation, Lu Yi would stop cultivating and walk around. However, it was not good to walk around in the current situation. After thinking about it, Lu Yi decided to enter the mirage to hone his saber skills. The cultivation of saber skills was undoubtedly much more difficult than the improvement of cultivation level. The improvement of cultivation level could be felt but not saber skills. Before breaking through a bottleneck, the improvement of saber skills was extremely slow. There might not be much change for a long time, but once a bottleneck was broken, it would enter a different realm. His mind was immersed in the storage space on his back. Lu Yi was ready to take out the breath fruit core. However, a moment later, when the breath fruit core appeared in his palm, he was stunned for a moment. At this moment, the spirit and the tiger both had a very strange feeling, as if Lu Yi had suddenly disappeared. But he was clearly in front of them. Yi was a little flustered. Even though she knew it was not a good time to disturb Lu Yi, she could not help but call out softly, "Lu Yi?" There was no response. Yi got up and came to Lu Ye's side. After carefully observing for a moment, she put her trembling hand under Lu Ye's nose and tested it. Suddenly, she burst into tears. Lu Yi. She could not feel Lu Ye's breathing, and she could feel that Lu Yi seemed to have lost something very important. As a spirit, although her cultivation was not high and was only equal to Lu Ye's, her perception of the soul was still very sharp. At this moment, there was no trace of the soul in Lu Ye's body. In other words, Lu Yi was only left with a physical body, and it was not breathing. Hu Po was also frightened and hurriedly ran in front of Lu Yi, patting him with his paw. Lu Yi is dead. He sat on the ground, sobbing non-stop. She was drowned in deep sorrow. Hu Po was scared out of his wits and growled at Lu Yi, but he did not get any response. How could he suddenly die without any reason? He was clearly still cultivating just now. But on second thought, that was not right. If Lu Yi was dead, Then what about his tiger life? He turned his head and growled at Yi. He could see through Hu Po's thoughts. After being reminded by Hu Po, she immediately reacted. Not only did Lu Yi and Hu Po have a pet contract, but they also formed a life origin technique. As Lu Ye's destined demonic beast, if Hu Po died, Lu Yi would be injured. But if Lu Yi died, Hu Po would not be able to live alone. And Yi was Hu Po's companion spirit. If Hu Po died, she would not be able to live either. So Lu Ye's life and death were not only related to himself, but also the survival of a spirit and a tiger. Now that Hu Po and Yi were both safe and sound, it could only mean one thing. Lu Yi was still alive. Realizing this, Yi hurriedly suppressed the sorrow in her heart. Sobbing, she reached out her hand and tested Lu Ye's breathing again. It was very, very weak, but there was indeed breathing. The great ups and downs of her emotions caused Yi to almost collapse to the ground. But she really could not understand what Lu Yi had done to suddenly become like this. In her perception, Lu Yi was clearly only an empty shell left here. She did not know where his soul had gone. Chapter 644. In an unknown environment, Lu Yi held his saber vigilantly, but he soon relaxed because there was no danger around. Unlike the situation he encountered when he entered the Mirage Realm, there was no fog around, and no monsters suddenly appeared. He was in a room. The doors and windows were closed, and the furnishings in the room were very simple. There was only a table and a few chairs. There was a teapot and a few teacups on the table. Lu Yi stepped forward and looked at the table. He found that the table was covered with a thick layer of dust. Obviously, no one had lived here for a long time. This seemed to be a place for guests, and there was a staircase leading upstairs. Lu Yi looked at the stairs and did not go up immediately, revealing a thoughtful look. He was very curious about where this place was. When he entered the Mirage Realm for experience, the environment was very simple. It was an open area surrounded by fog, and from time to time enemies would rush out. But after the fusion of the two breath fruit cores and he pushed open the second door, he actually appeared in such a strange place. What made him feel even more strange was his current state. In fact, when he first came in, he noticed some wonderful changes in his body, but he did not have time to investigate. Now that he was sure there was no danger for the time being, he began to check his condition. After a moment of silent perception, Lu Yi raised his brow. Things seemed to be not simple. He found that his strength had skyrocketed a lot out of thin air. Originally, his cultivation was only at the 5th order Cloud River realm, but now the strength contained in his body was far beyond that. He was probably stronger than those 9th order Cloud River realm cultivators he had encountered before. In other words, he was now very likely equivalent to a true lake realm cultivator. As for what true lake realm he was at, Lu Yi really did not know. He had not been in contact with many true lake realm cultivators. Without a comparison, it was really difficult to judge his current strength. When he stepped through the door, Lu Yi suddenly had a feeling that he had become stronger. Now it seemed that it was not an illusion. He had indeed become stronger. But why was this? Could this environment improve his strength for no reason? This obviously did not make sense. What made Lu Yi even more puzzled was that the power flowing in his body was not only spirit energy, but also another strange power that gave him a strange sense of familiarity. Was this the power of his soul? When Lu Yi saw the essence of this power, he could not help but frown. What was going on? He was just a 5th order Cloud River realm cultivator. Even if he was now equivalent to a true lake stage cultivator, he shouldn't have been able to sense spiritual energy. Every cultivator was born with the power of the soul. As the cultivator's strength increased, the power of the soul would also increase correspondingly. However, before the Divine Sea realm, cultivators only had the power of the soul. They could only use the power of their soul to passively resist some attacks aimed at the soul. There was no way for them to actively feel the attacks. This was equivalent to a hidden treasure within a cultivator's body. Cultivators who were not strong enough would not be able to open this treasure. Only those who had reached the Spirit Sea realm and developed spiritual will would be able to sense the existence of their own spiritual energy and use it. For example, although Lu Ye's spiritual energy was powerful enough to allow him to perceive many potential dangers, this kind of perception was strictly a passive ability and paled in comparison to the active use of his divine sense. The battles between Spirit Sea Realm cultivators often involve the confrontation of spiritual wills. Sometimes it might seem calm on the surface, but in reality it was extremely dangerous. Lu Yi could now clearly feel the power of the soul flowing in his body. It was precisely because of the existence of his soul that his strength had increased tremendously. His soul power was already far beyond that of cultivators in the same realm, reaching the standard of a true lake-stage cultivator. Was this the reason why his strength had skyrocketed? Lu Yi slowly came to his senses. So, the current him was equivalent to a spirit? An existence like Yi? Wasn't this an out-of-body experience? But it was not the same as a normal out-of-body experience. In a normal out-of-body experience, the cultivator could only use the power of the soul. There was no way to use spirit power. But now he was in a state where both spirit power and soul power coexisted, which was very strange. He suddenly remembered that when he entered here, he felt as if he had broken free from his shackles. Now it seemed that the shackles came from his body. The cultivation of his soul was much higher than the cultivation of his body. So, after his soul left his body, he felt as if he had broken free from his shackles and became stronger. This mirage was completely different from the ones he had entered before. In the past, the mirage was equivalent to a projection. Whatever state Lu Yi was in, the projection would be in the same state. Everything that Lu Yi carried with him, including his storage bag and storage space, would be projected into the mirage. The mirage realm before him was not just a projection. On the basis of the projection, his entire divine soul was drawn over. Lu Yi suddenly felt that something was wrong. In the mirage, his biggest advantage was that he was not afraid of death. Because even if he died, he would not lose much. At first, when his soul power was not strong enough, he would suffer for half a day after dying. But since he obtained a lot of soul-cleansing water to cleanse his soul and strengthen it, dying in the mirage was no longer a big deal to him. It was nothing more than the feeling of being pricked in the head by a needle. He just had to endure it. But if he was in a state similar to an out-of-body experience, once he died, Lu Yi could not tell what would happen to him. Would he die on the spot? Or would his soul be severely damaged? It seemed that he had to be careful. He could not die here easily. Otherwise, no one knew what bad consequences there would be. As for how to leave this place, Lu Yi had no clue at the moment. He could only explore slowly. He checked his body again. The Pan Mountain saber and the weapon box were at his waist. The storage bag and the storage space on the back of his hand could also be stored freely. Just as he thought before, this time, he was in an out-of-body experience based on a projection, so he could use the things around him at any time. In this state, the only advantage he had was that his strength had increased a lot. He was not in a hurry to push open the door and leave. He did not know the environment for the time being. At least this room was safe. In the past, when he entered the mirage, he only needed to stand there, and a steady stream of monsters would rush out of the fog to sharpen his saber skills and combat skills. Although it was monotonous and boring, it was simple and clear. This time the situation was much more complicated. So he needed to collect as many clues as possible to determine his current location and the dangers he might encounter. He walked toward the stairs on the side. As he stepped on the stairs, the wooden floor creaked, which was extremely ear-piercing in this quiet environment. Lu Yi could not help but have some doubts. Was this a mirage or not? He had always thought that the mirage was an illusion. Everything he saw in the mirage was fake, so even if he died in it, the loss would not be great. However, in the mirage this time, everything around him was so real that it did not give him the feeling that it was fake at all. He quickly walked down the dozen or so stairs. Lu Yi carefully poked his head out and looked at the second floor. Then he suddenly froze. Because at this moment, he met countless pairs of grayish-green eyes. Those eyes were all compound eyes. Lu Yi could almost see his own stunned expression in those pairs of eyes. The second floor of the room that he thought was safe was actually hiding more than 10 zergs. And they were the kind of zergs that he was very familiar with. They looked like praying mantises. He did not know how many praying mantises, including other types of zergs, he had killed in the mirage before. How could there be Zergs here? Before he could think deeply, the praying mantis Zergs hiding on the second floor had already flapped their wings and flew toward the stairs. The leading Zerg raised its boring knife high. The bright knife light flashed and the Zerg was immediately cut in half. Dark green Zerg blood splattered, and a pungent smell filled the air. Lu Yi stood at the stairs, the mountain pan saber at his waist already out of its sheath. After killing the first Zerg, Lu Yi was slightly relieved. These praying mantis Zergs were not too strong. They were still in the Cloud River realm. With his current strength, which was equivalent to the True Lake realm, killing them was naturally not difficult. Moreover, the previous training in the Mirage allowed him to know the weakness of these Zergs. The knife light was biting cold. Lu Yi guarded the stairs without taking a step back. All the praying mantis Zergs that rushed over died one after another. In just a moment they were all killed. Dots of light floated out from the dead Zergs. Unlike the dark red light that killed the Wanmo Ridge cultivators, these lights were golden. Killing Zergs also gave merit points. While Lu Yi was surprised, he was even more certain that this was not an illusion. This was because he had killed so many Zergs in the Mirage before, but he had never received any merit points. If he could receive merit points, this meant that the Zergs he killed were all real. But why did killing Zergs also give him merit points? Lu Yi was curious about how many merit points he could get by killing these Zergs, so he checked his battlefield imprint. The battlefield imprint showed that he had more than 140,000 merit points. Lu Yi did not carefully record the specific number of merit points he had before, so it was difficult for him to determine the standard of merit points for killing Zergs. Just as he was about to record the current number of merit points and compare it later, he suddenly noticed a change that puzzled him. The battlefield imprint recorded his information. In the column of merit points, the number showed 576. This number was obviously wrong because in Lu Ye's impression, he only had 56 merit points. This number had not changed for a long time. After all, for a Cloud River Realm cultivator like him, there were not many opportunities to come into contact with merit points. So far there had only been one. It was that time in the realm of beasts. Chapter 645. In the cultivation world of the 9 prefectures, merit points and battle achievements were only displayed in the form of numbers on a cultivator's battlefield imprint. However, they could allow cultivators to obtain a lot of material wealth. No matter which one it was, they were both extremely important to cultivators. There were roughly 3 ways to earn merit points. The first was through killing enemies, the second was through selling items in the Destiny Treasury, and the third was when one was in the Spirit Stream tier and received rewards from the garrison. There were no other ways to earn merit points. However, there were many other ways to obtain merit points. For example, in the secret realm of the realm of beasts, Lu Yi did not obtain much merit points just by killing enemies. However, he had led Pang Dehai and the others to resolve the source of the realm of beasts crisis. This had allowed him to obtain a lot of merit points. Thus, merit points could not only be obtained by killing enemies, they could also be obtained by completing certain tasks. Furthermore, the amount of merit points obtained was much greater than just killing enemies. In comparison, merit points were undoubtedly more important. This was because merit points could be used to purchase spirit lots. Merit points could not be used. The only way to exchange merit points for spirit lots was to participate in spirit lot auctions. This was also the reason why many cultivators at the Cloud River realm liked to participate in various secret realms in the Cloud River battlefield. The Spirit Stream battlefield had many inheritances, while the Cloud River battlefield had many secret realms. The former allowed cultivators to obtain a stronger foundation, while the latter allowed cultivators to grow faster. In this way, powerful cultivators could be born generation after generation in the cultivation world of the 9 prefectures. Since entering the Cloud River battlefield, Lu Yi had only entered the secret realm of the realm of beasts. Firstly, he had only entered the Cloud River battlefield for a short period of time. Secondly, he had not been to many places. Furthermore, some secret realms required a specific time to open. However, this did not mean that there were few secret realms in the Cloud River battlefield. If cultivators really wanted to explore secret realms, they would have the opportunity to do so once a month. There were many secret realms that gave merit points. In this way, cultivators could obtain merit points through their actions in these secret realms and exchange them for spirit lots. Although this was a bit difficult and dangerous, it was better than waiting for the heavenly spirit lot or cultivating in some low-quality spirit lands. Lu Yi had obtained many merit points in the secret realm of the realm of beasts. After exchanging them for spirit lots, he only had 56 merit points left. Since then, there had not been any changes. Now, his 56 points had become 576 points. In other words, he had gained 520 points. This was something that could be exchanged for 2 or 3 white spiritual sticks. Lu Yi immediately understood that the insectoids he killed were not merit points, but battle achievements. This made him overjoyed. Comparatively speaking, merit points were undoubtedly more useful. Moreover, he didn't lack merit points at the moment. After some calculations, the comparison between the number of merit points and the strength of the insectoids was not much different from merit points. For example, killing a 5th order Cloud River Realm cultivator would give Lu Yi 40 merit points. Then, killing a 5th order Cloud River Realm insect race cultivator would give him 40 merit points. Thus, the dozen or so Cloud River Tearbug tribe cultivators had only contributed 520 contribution points to him. While he was excited, he also became more vigilant. This was because anything that involved battle merits would not be simple. The cultivators of the Cloud River battlefield had concluded that mystic realms with battle merits were much more dangerous than other mystic realms. Although Lu Yi did not enter a mystic realm this time, but the Mirage realm, from the clues revealed everywhere, this Mirage realm was not a good place. Even if he had the strength of a true Lake Realm cultivator, he could not guarantee his own safety. Putting away the distracting thoughts in his mind, Lu Yi remained vigilant. The entire floor of the second floor was covered with scattered insect corpses. Green blood dyed the floor green, and there was a pungent smell in the air. There was a bed that looked like a resting place, but like the first floor, there was no one. From the dust piled up in the corner, it seemed that no one had lived here for a long time. Although encountering insectoids in the Mirage realm was a common thing, Lu Yi had no clue where this place was. The second floor was not big, and with a glance it was basically clear. There was a wooden window that was wide open. The insectoids must have flown in through this window. Just as Lu Yi was about to move to close the window, there was a sudden bang. The light in the room dimmed, and a calf-like figure climbed up the wooden window. Its triangular head poked in through the window, and its 2 gray-green compound eyes reflected Lu Yi's figure. Another mantis insectoid had come, and this insectoid gave Lu Yi a feeling that it was much more dangerous than the ones he had killed before. Could be a coincidence, or it could be that the aura he had released just now had attracted it. The moment it saw Lu Yi, the insectoid immediately rushed in through the window. Its 2 blades danced like a weapon cultivator proficient in blade arts, and it stirred up a storm of slaughter in the not-so-spacious room. Lu Yi raised his mountain blade, and in a flash, he was already engaged in battle with the insectoid. Ding-ding-dang-dang-dang sounds could be heard, and the surging spirit chi turned the room into a mess. Lu Yi was still a little unfamiliar with suddenly gaining strength comparable to a true lake stage cultivator. After all, he was only a 5th order Cloud River Realm cultivator, so before he could fully familiarize himself with his strength, he could not display his full strength. This insectoid that suddenly appeared was indeed much stronger than the ones before. At the very least, the blades it wielded were incomparably hard, and could actually block the mountain blade's slash. This was definitely a true lake stage insectoid. Lu Yi was very curious. If he killed this insectoid, would the merit be calculated according to his current true lake stage cultivation, or according to his 5th order Cloud River Realm cultivation? If it was the latter, then the benefits this insectoid could bring him would be quite impressive. In the calculation of merit, a true lake stage cultivator's merit was 100 points, and every minor level of cultivation increased by 100 points. In other words, a 1st order true lake stage cultivator's merit was 100 points. A 2nd order true lake stage cultivator's merit was 200 points, and a 9th order true lake stage cultivator's merit was 900 points. If a 5th order Cloud River Realm cultivator killed a 1st order true lake stage cultivator, crossing 5 minor levels, Then the merit would be 6 times the basic merit, which was 600 points. It was the same for the corresponding merit. 600 merit could be exchanged for a green spirit tag. And this was calculated according to a first-order true lake stage cultivator's strength. The insectoid in front of him was most likely not just a first-order true lake stage cultivator. The stronger it was, the greater the benefits he could obtain from killing it, and it was the kind that increased exponentially. All these thoughts flashed through Lu Ye's mind in an instant, and disappeared in an instant. Lu Ye didn't think too much about it, and his body nimbly moved around the room, blocking the opponent's storm-like slashes. The rapid exchange of blows in the narrow space allowed him to control his current state more and more skillfully. Seizing the moment when the insectoid raised his blade, Lu Ye activated his wind travel buff, and his body moved like a lightning bolt, rushing forward to within 3 meters of the insectoid. Light flashed on the Panshan blade, and extremely complicated patterns appeared on the pitch-black blade. Double-peak sharp spirit tattoo. The sharp blade fell straight towards Lu Ye's back, but it only grazed his body and stabbed into empty air. With a poochie sound, the mountain blade pierced the mantis chest. The moment the sharp spirit mark was activated, the insectoid's body shook violently, and a short hiss came from its mouth. The other blade slashed down, and Lu Ye hurriedly retreated. The mountain blade brought out a pungent green blood that spilled onto the floor. The heavily injured mantis body swayed from side to side, and it instinctively waved its 2 blades. With a rumbling sound, the wall of the second floor was broken, and broken pieces of wood fell from the sky, causing dust and smoke to rise. When the dust settled, the mantis was already dead. However, Lu Ye wasn't in the mood to check the changes in his merit, and he just stared blankly at the distant sky. The sky seemed to have split open, and a huge gap appeared. Inside the gap, there seemed to be another world. At this moment, a large number of insectoids were swarming out of the gap, and they were pouring into this world. These insectoids were of different shapes and sizes. Lu Ye had seen many of them in the Mirage realm, but there were also many that he had never seen before. They were like cats that had smelled the scent of fish. They swarmed into this place from an unknown space. Lu Ye didn't observe for too long. He just took a quick glance and withdrew his gaze, hiding the shock and confusion in his heart, and his expression turned solemn. He had been in the house all this time, and he didn't know what was going on outside. However, after his battle with the true lake realm mantis caused the wall of the second floor to shatter, the situation outside was imprinted in his eyes. As far as his eyes could see, there was a street, and on both sides of the street were rows of familiar-looking houses. Many of the houses had collapsed, and on the street, among the broken walls, there were many insectoids of all shapes and sizes, flying and crawling, and there were countless of them. The sudden commotion here had obviously alarmed these insectoids. When Lu Ye saw them, they also saw Lu Ye. The sound of wings flapping rang out, and insectoids with wings spread out flew. There were also insectoids that looked like hunting dogs, but their bodies were covered in carapace, and they had slender tails behind their backs. They had sharp fangs in their mouths, and their bodies were strong and vigorous, and they rushed over at an extremely fast speed. The situation was not good. When he first appeared in this house, he thought that this place was very safe, but when he went up to the second floor, he realized that there were some hidden dangers in the safety. At this moment he finally saw the truth. The safety he thought did not exist at all. There were all kinds of insectoids in all directions, and he didn't notice it before. Firstly, these insectoids didn't move much, and secondly, he came here through a projection and an out-of-body experience, so his senses had not recovered. Therefore, he didn't notice the insectoids outside, and even the insectoids on the second floor. You're tuning into the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.